Here we go. Welcome everybody to another episode of the BTR stream. Today we are sowing discourse with Raw Egg Nationalist, and we have another newcomer here, Alexandra Polyakov. Welcome, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining in all of this. And we also have our great old comers, Delivered Morgan, and of course the great Giovanni Panacchietti. Mwah, Bella, Bella. So welcome everybody. All the new people who are watching this, don't forget to subscribe to break the rules, keep the show running, and I really appreciate everybody joining us for this. Anyway, let's get right into it. Raw Egg Nationalist, you have a journal that you came out with recently. I would love to talk about the inspiration for that, just to get us started. Man's World Journal. So, but even before that, though, because I know Gio's about to say, Lev, you forgot to, do the introduction. So, Raw Egg Nationalist, first, before the journal, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then the journal. Go for it, my friend.
Okay, well, I'll have to be a bit coy about myself because I want to protect my identity. But well.
Oh, and by the way, I'm drinking your raw egg, and I got two of these over here. So, and we'll get into this as well, what exactly this is. But anyway, go for it.
Yeah, good man. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, so I spent more than my fair share of years at university in England, and was pursuing an academic career, which didn't work out. I've done quite a wide variety of weird and wonderful things. I was a martial arts instructor at one point, but I sort of fell into Twitter first with a lurker account that was called, I've talked about this before, that was called Turning Point Göbekli Tepe, which is to do with
I like the reference. Revolution. Graham Hancock and all that. Did you get into Graham Hancock at around the same time?
I saw him on Joe Rogan a couple of times, yeah, and it was just
that's the pipeline. That's the pipeline. It all starts with
radicalization.
Yes,
pipeline.
Yep, the Joe Rogan pipeline, like the PewDiePie pipeline. So yes, I was just lurking for a while, and then I was working out anyway. I started seeing people talking about slonking raw eggs. Ben Braddock was one of them. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. And he has a great account. And so I thought, well, I'm eating all these raw eggs. Maybe I should be the raw egg nationalist, which was a phrase, raw egg nationalism, that I'd seen. So I'm not the originator of the movement, but I've kind of become a figurehead in a way because I've taken on the name for myself, which wasn't really a deliberate choice. I mean, I spent quite a while having very few followers. Then I wrote my cookbook because there was a bit of controversy on our side of Twitter over cookbooks last summer. And,
the Soul Bra one.
Yeah, there was about the pricing and the content.
And by the way, make sure that when you're speaking to the mic, it's even, because right now it's kind of going in and out sometimes. I don't know if you're moving.
Sure. Yeah, I have a tendency to do that. I'll stay still.
There we go. I knew it.
Because he's brimming with vitality and energy.
From all those raw eggs.
Exactly.
How many do you eat a day?
18.
Is this all in one smoothie or throughout there?
Yeah, three of 6.
Well, there are 7 in these two.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a lovely color.
It is.
Good going.
Well, this is good quality eggs. These are from.
Yeah, I would assume. So you want to get like organic pasteurized eggs.
Oh yeah.
You want to get grass-fed milk.
Raw milk. This is raw cream and milk, half and half, along with eggs and a little bit of the maple syrup.
So it's raw milk and raw eggs. You're gonna.
He's not gonna die.
You're gonna die.
You're going to live. But so the book the cookbook that you're referring to, which everyone listening to the stream, please click off. Don't click off. Click another tab. Go to Amazon. Buy Raw Egg Nationalist. Yes. Please go. There it is. Independently published, I assume. It's yeah.
Yeah, just through Amazon KDP.
And this is the image that you were greeted with right at the beginning. The Chad. You can't read it because it's reversed, but the Chad versus the Chad egg slonker, the virgin meal prepper.
That's my ideology in one image.
So you were so your inspiration for the it's not it's half a cookbook and half of a thought probe into the restructuring of health and masculinity through diet. I'm guessing. Not
Yeah.
guessing. I've actually read. I quite enjoyed the. There's quite a bit of it, but please go into the inspiration for writing the Raw Egg Nationalist in theory and practice. Cook good with the Raw Egg Nationalist. And when I was a kid, one of my favorite shows was Pasquale, which you only know if you're from Ontario and you were Italian. But yeah, so go into the inspiration. Like, what is the message of the Raw Egg Nationalist? Then we'll get into Man's World, or as some have called Dork's World. But maybe we'll get into that too. So yeah.
Yeah, we got a picture from Slash over here with his eggs and OJ shake. Now, I don't know about the OJ. I mean, we're going to get into like all that sugar going in real quick a little bit later. But anyway, go for it, Raw Egg.
Yeah, so I'd been a chef very briefly, and so I thought, well, actually, I could do a cookbook. But what would it be about? Well, it would be about raw eggs. And I'm like, well, there aren't really that many recipes for raw eggs, are there? So I decided that it would be a recipe for eggs a cookbook for egg recipes in general. And then I thought, well, actually, maybe this would be a chance for me to lay down some of my thoughts that I've been having about raw egg nationalism, as few as they were and as simple as they were. But anyway, that was a surprise hit, and I followed that up with the second book, which was 3 Lives of Golden Age Bodybuilders, which was about three bodybuilders from the sort of early days of bodybuilding: Reg Park, Chuck Sipes, and Chet Yorton. And I was kind of inspired by some reading I'd been doing in the classics, basically biography as a moral exemplar. So I was thinking of 3 Lives by Three Lives by Cornelius Nepos. That was it. I forget sometimes. And one of those chaps, Reg Park, had his own journal that he founded. It was initially, I think, the Reg Park Journal, and then it became Man's World and the Reg Park Journal.
So by the way, part of the reason why I'm here is that my grandfather was a publishing magnate, and he published a number of periodicals based on bodybuilding.
Nice.
And a lot of them, and like initially in like the 40s, they were sort of just about like, basically of that ilk, like Man's World, how to be more of a man, how like spicy stories, like kind of risque stuff, especially for the time. And then gradually became modernized and became more about bodybuilding and modern bodybuilding. And he's the founder of Muscle and Fitness magazine. He's Joe Weider.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a small name then. Yeah, one of the biggies. God. So I did the second book, and that came out, and that was quite popular. I don't know that it was as popular as the first one, but I think it's the best of the 3 books I've done. Actually, it's the one I was most proud of. But I had kind of memed myself into writing the cookbook, and then I sort of memed myself into starting this magazine. I did a post where I said, "Would you subscribe if I resurrected the Man's World Journal?" And with some funny pictures of the Man's World Journal from the 60s, these sort of deeply sexist covers that magazines like that had in the 60s.
Well, is it kind of like Man's Life magazine, where there was a man who was fighting these evil ferrets? They were all over his body, and he was ripping them off. Is it a similar thing, or is that more like pulp adventure comics?
That's more sort of pulp. It was like a magazine about sort of bodybuilding and being more masculine, basically. So it sort of sold like sex enhancement pills as well, had adverts for that sort of stuff. But it was mainly articles about bodybuilding and sort of living a manly lifestyle. But the cover was always like a picture of a muscular man, maybe with an attractive woman sort of bending over in front of him, or something like that, something titillating.
We should talk about if masculinity is toxic or not.
We definitely should. But by the way, Alexandra, since you don't have headphones, I think I'm hearing from your screen the Discord server beeps. I don't know if that is indeed the case. Does everybody else hear them or no?
I can
hear
tell.
There we go. All right, I knew it wasn't me this time around. So this
Right.
is why headphones should be worn. That's okay. Everybody makes these mistakes.
I don't have headphones.
That's okay. I mean, you can go into settings and just get rid of the audio, or turn Discord off entirely. Anyway,
What?
I know how could you live without Discord, right? But anyway, when it comes
Hold on.
to
You mean you don't want to get groomed on Discord all the time, every day? So yeah, it's a lot of great things come from being memed. I've done several paintings where people have memed me into doing them. But Man's World, it's funny that you mentioned that it started off as a meme, because I feel that it has a sufficient momentum to actually become an established, what would you say, an established space, the way that you would say Social Matter was back in the day, or Thermidor magazine, or something of that ilk, with something more explicitly, what would you say, practical. I think is that your aim, is the practicality of actually being inspired to go and work out, not just work out, but actually to commit to real self-improvement that isn't something that's marketed to you the way that self-help is. What is your ethos? What is your goal with Men's World, or resurrecting it as such? And that's the cover. That is who's the guy on the cover again? He was a French
Alain Delon.
Alain Delon.
Yeah.
One of my favorite men in the whole wide world. He's like 70 something. He's still so hot. He's still gorgeous.
He cooked Mick Jagger, if I'm correct to that.
Hell yeah.
Oh wow. So kind of like so what is the driving force behind Men's World? What is the
Well, I mean, initially it was just it just was a meme, and it was just a kind of reflection on the fact that men's magazines today are so pathetic. And like I can remember reading magazines in my teens that were sort of what were called lads mags in this country. So they were kind of like for lads who go and who like football and drink beer and want to see tits and arse and
page 3 on what's the
that
page
kind of
3
stuff.
of that kind of stuff.
There was
Sun.
was it called White House magazine, one of the British page 3 magazines?
Penthouse.
Well, Penthouse obviously, but there was another one I think called White House, which was, well, I guess it was a play on Penthouse, but yeah, there were a couple of those. I ended up looking up this girl from Mr. Bean, right?
Yeah.
There was an episode of Mr. Bean where he went to a drawing class and he was painting this nude model. So I decided to look her up. Her name is Cindy Milo, for all the people who are curious about her. So check her out. She was one of the page 3 girls back in the day. But anyway, it is a very beautifully done magazine. A lot of great illustrations there. And it did also harken back to some of the original Playboys back in the day as well. Would you say you also got a bit of inspiration from that? I mean, obviously with the bush women.
The bush women. Yeah, they're not Kalahari bush women. They're it's I mean that's I was kind of thinking of like classic 60s Playboy, where you would have the centerfolds, but you'd also have interviews with people like Steve McQueen and stuff like that. I wanted it just to have a kind of rugged sort of masculine vibe, because if you pick up a magazine like Men's Health today, then it's just like it's just going to be like an article about how to feel your testicles for lumps for testicular cancer, and then some other stuff about some other sort of woke crap.
Wait, so they managed to get woke stuff into Men's Health magazine? I'd love to know how.
GQ is that's the.
Can you give some examples? I'm just really curious about that, because I have not encountered that. Well,
GQ was edited by, I think it was either Lindy West or someone like that. She was a part of the editing team, so that's all you need to know. They're at the forefront. In fact, I think men's magazines had to be colonized first.
Who is Lindy West?
She was the Jezebel. It was either her or it was some other big name in the feminist blogger sphere. Became an editor of GQ, and I think men's magazines, they really did need to colonize first. Like I remember this one. It's funny you mentioned Men's Health. I don't want to interrupt you, Rag, but there was this one I had before I forget. I had to tell you this. I was going through these health articles, and one of them was in Men's Health about how you shouldn't eat eggs because this one random study said that could potentially increase your risk for prostate cancer. But the cover up was like, you know, these boomers that want to be like hip and young and they have like the hipster glasses. It was one of these guys. He had this really pouty face. So it's like in my mind, I immediately discredited this fucking article about eggs because of this one random study that eggs could lead to prostatic cancer. And I just said, no, this is obviously bullshit just by looking at the cover. But
your intuitions were right.
Yeah. And same thing with the early mid 90s and this whole fad of low fat this, low fat that, and adding all the sugar. I mean, this is already a dead horse in the fitness industry as a whole, from what I understand. I think like everybody is on board with the idea that, you know, fat is good. There's nothing wrong with fat. There's nothing wrong with fat, and there's nothing wrong with like organ meats.
With, like, trans fats. There's something wrong with like heavily processed fats that are shelf stable and obviously wreak immense havoc on your system. There's a lot of problems with feeding animals that we eat trans fats.
Yeah,
it's all relative. So yeah, pure healthy fats that you get directly from plants and animals, yeah, of course they're fine, and you know, in the appropriate amounts and in the appropriate calorie levels for your, you know, your height and weight. But like, no, it is true that like fat isn't always good. It really depends on the quality and quantity
definitely
of the fat you're consuming.
But it's the name fat, you know, like
if McDonald's were to have stayed with frying their McDonald's fries in beef talon instead of canola oil, I think we would have had much less deaths from diabetes in the American inner city. Yeah. That's just my hot take. But yeah,
we also have Remus on. People are asking in the chat, are you going to show yourself today? Because your camera is on. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I don't want to dox you. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, buddy. Remus, you got to unmute yourself. Well, anyway, guys, subscribe for Remus, who has showed his face sort of like on the camera right now. But again, like that was a warning that I said, so you know, hopefully everything's fine. But anyway, raw egg nationalist. When it comes to fat, we are all on the same page. But when it comes to something like sugar, I told you earlier that it's not going to be a problem if you know, I put some maple syrup in these raw egg drinks. Now, what exactly may people who are more on keto be missing when it comes to sugar, and are there any benefits to sugar, or is it just a matter of, you know, not overdoing it and maybe just adding a little bit and it's not really going to fuck up your day that much?
Well, I mean, I'm basically on a keto diet, I would say, although I consume a lot of milk and there's plenty of sugar in milk, so I don't actually know whether I am in ketosis or not. But I don't eat bread, I don't eat grains or anything like that. I eat some fermented vegetables. I might occasionally have a banana before I work out, maybe just one banana. So I time my carbs so that I can use them best, you know, so that I've got some sugar in my system for when I'm working out. But otherwise, you know, it's just a lot of fat and a lot of protein. I'm no great expert on carbohydrates, I must say. I mean, all I know is that I feel a hell of a lot better than I did when I was eating bread, for instance. And I was eating nice bread as well. I was making my own sourdough bread, you know, with a starter that I left by the boiler. And I feel like a totally different person. My thought processes are clearer now. Whether that's gluten or whether that's just carbs per se, I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of historical evidence, for instance, from the Plains Indians and the Inuit, and from other cultures, that you can live basically a carb-free life and grow to be tall and be strong. I mean, there are regular reports about Plains Indians being 7 feet tall, you know, being really incredible physical specimens, and they had to be, and they ate mostly, almost entirely. What was that? Sorry.
Don't discount genetics. You know,
no, sure.
Also just, you know.
Well, the Inuit, they weren't that tall. They ate a lot of organ meat. I am curious about their health lifespans, things of that nature.
They have actually their lifespan is similar to people in other. Certainly, I think their lifespan is even similar to modern people's. Their bodies have evolved, the Inuit, to have an abundance of certain nutrients over others, which is really quite fascinating. Because if a person went up there and ate their diet, I think the vitamin, what's the one that's very heavy? The vitamin A, or is it A or K?
It's A in the liver.
Yeah, would basically kill you if you ate vitamin A in the seal liver. A number of explorers have met very terrible fates that way by eating. The one group that went up in Canada ate bear liver, polar bear liver.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Man. Well, this is interesting, though, because when it comes to certain supplements that are on the market today, people are perhaps quick, perhaps rightfully so, perhaps wrongfully so, to bulk buy a lot of these supplements for animal livers and organs of other types. And,
Sure.
they just pop those things in. I mean, you were mentioning liver pills as well in your book. So what I'm curious about is there something to these supplements that would potentially harm you because it's not as balanced as actually eating the liver itself?
Vince Gironda, I think at one point was eating something like 150 liver tablets a day. I mean, he had this diet that he said it was called the liver tablet diet that he said could add an inch to your arms in 4 weeks or something. All you had to do was eat 150 liver tablets a day.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
but
did he have any problems later on in life? Like if we take a look at the full lifespan of somebody like that doing something like that.
I can't remember how he died. I think he died of a heart attack. I think he was in his 70s at least. He died in the 90s, and I think he was born in 1919. So I think he was 72 when he died.
I mean, it's not bad, but it's not great. I mean, today it wouldn't be considered that great.
But anyways, I think before we get on to actual health advice, I think just going over the importance of man's world, because there was this one part there was this one specifically a dietary article where it talks about how the whole people that talk about a zero grain or carb diet, that was a good one, because I feel like genetics does have quite a bit to play. And there's articles by Ben Braddock, and there's excerpts from various books published by Rogue Scholar, Mystery Grove, Antelope, what's the other one? I'm forgetting.
Antelope Press.
Antelope Press, yes. I believe they're also publishing Borzi's book soon. But go through the importance of why men's world is needed, because like we've said, there is very much a dirge of actual good advice, but also the selections of the various stories from figures like Yukio Mishima and Ernst Junger I found quite good, and the translations that you've managed to get of them as well. Specifically, my favorite, because I wrote this big ass essay that I'll probably include somewhere. The original site is gone, but specifically dealing with Gregor Bataille's eroticism and the link between death and the erotic. And it was about contemporary art and all that stuff. But that one relating to what Mishima was talking about, I found quite fascinating. But just the importance of why we need this literature, because it very much reminds me, while reading it, of the old school Playboy Penthouse, where it was provocative, it was sexy, it was, people would say misogynist, but it had interviews with cultural figures, and people have managed to isolate these interviews, the meme, right, of I just read Playboy for the interviews, for the articles, but the articles were good, and they were with countercultural figures. And I feel like by including literature from people like BAP, like our good friend ZHP, like Ben Braddock, hopefully maybe myself one day in the future issues, but including who I'm missing someone, I'm missing people. It seems that we're in this position now where we have become, not in this cringe Paul Just Watson way, we're the new punk rock, but it seems that there is a viable counterculture that needs something more tangible than just a collection of blog posts, if you will. So maybe you could riff off of that for a bit.
Well, that's exactly. I think fundamentally, one of the most important things is to gather these things together in one place. That's what I really wanted to do, because it's one thing to have them on, oh, there's a good Twitter post and there's a link to somebody's Substack, and then there's something else, somebody's published a book. Gathering all of this talent together and showing that it exists in one place at one time. I think that was quite powerful. That was one of the most powerful things about it. I think was showing that all of this talent does exist on our side of the internet, on our side of Twitter, and so that's primarily what I wanted to do. One of the things that I wanted to do, besides just making a cool magazine, because I like reading cool magazines, or used to like reading cool magazines when they existed.
Yeah.
But
are there any cool magazines out there still? Would you say?
Not that I can think of. Not that I can think of now.
Teen Vogue. No.
No. Jesus Christ.
No,
I
really.
I can't
think of. I mean, even disinformation before, when they stopped, even like right before they like kind of petered out, they became like mentally broken in the Trump era. But no, I think there really isn't like a very good alternative like zine culture out there. It's very different. I think like even people say that blogging is dead, which it kind of is. I mean, Substack is a bit of a revival of it, but it seems that there really isn't like a collective force. Like the last thing I could think of was what we were doing at Thermidor Magazine or Social Matter. I mean, the American Sun obviously is, shout out to the American Sun, by the way. Very good people, very good. They've really been instrumental in helping, newer writers. But yeah, you're right. There really isn't a physical magazine filled with a unique aesthetic, and we'll get to the aesthetic part as well. But yeah, there really is. I can't even think of a good magazine that this like cool and edgy. It seems that the magazine circuit is done for a large part.
Print media in general is pretty much done.
Yeah.
All the periodicals I read now are completely online. The blog has replaced, the editorial, like I'm fine with that. More like less to
Yeah.
Well, Alexandra, could you also tell us a little bit about the kind of content that you like to consume or find yourself consuming? What are the things in the, periodicals, like you said, like not these physical magazines, but just the articles that you read that you find to have recurring themes over and over again in 2020 and 2021?
Well, I mean, I try to stay off social media as much as I can. It's really addictive. But I was into Twitter for a while, and Twitter is just a constant source of like information, all these things you can read about, people constantly posting things. So it's just a vast sort of never-ending resource. I do follow some blogs. I follow a lot of kind of literary blogs. I'm really into comic books, actually. So here we go. I like Foreign Policy, the Global Magazine of News and Ideas. Metal Magazine, Quartzy is really good. Can't pronounce this one, Neo-Japanese me. Yeah. So yeah, I have like a roster of stuff that I'll kind of go through. I don't know. It's not that.
And do you notice that there is a wave of this similar wokeness going through all these publications as well?
Wokeness. I really do. I don't think any of the places I hang out tend to be particularly woke, and that's by my personal choice. If I see it cropping up, I'll just ignore it. And when you say woke, I'm assuming you mean the more sort of like.
Oh, there are levels, there are gradations.
The sort of the more irritating kind of like critical race theory, kind of like the sort of stuff that James Lindsay likes to rail against.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm more of I'm more of a fan of something that I've, sad to say, only discovered recently, but I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with, I'm not going to say this correctly, Star Slater Codex, and now that there's a new one since
Slate
that guy's...
Star Codex.
Thank you, Slate Star Codex.
Slater.
Same thing. I just think of Slater from Saved by the Bell, so it just screws my mind up a bit. But when it comes to something like that...
I mean, what's the guy's name? Alexander. He does need to be shoved in lock, but that's besides the point.
No, see, this is the thing. Here, I have a theory, and I'm curious what Raw Egg Nationalist and everybody else thinks about this as well. So, I think that because there was this wave of wokeness that infected a lot of different things, it seems to people, maybe they're right about it, but it at least seems to people who are more online that this is something that's shared by way more people as far as their personal opinions go, than really it is. While really it could just be just like a loud minority, and most people, like most normies, they really don't give a crap. And I think that this may be why there has been this reactionary movement against a lot of these things. But my whole thing is I'm curious, like, in the long term, if we're talking about Man's World issue 2, 3, 4, hopefully 100, when it comes to all the things...
1,000.
Hopefully 1,000, yes. What did I say? 100? How dare I? So when it comes to all these issues coming out, would there be a way that it would be... Like, what would be a method to make sure it does not become a closed circle where everybody is just kind of like preaching to the choir, everybody's on the same page? Because for me, like, I feel that that's where I have my weakness. If I ever feel like I'm at a point where it's like everybody's agreeing with each other, you know, either this is absolutely right or maybe we're missing something or something's wrong. Like, what would be the antidote to that to make sure that it becomes anti-fragile, that it's not going to be something that just becomes, you know, like its own enclosed system, not really letting anybody in, not really letting any other counter ideas in?
Well, that's the internet now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
because, you know, once, all right, so capitalists have known for a very long time that the best way to sell something is sort of to divide people into two groups, and you you advertise one thing to one group and you advertise another thing to the other group, and they have to be competing. That's why in toy stores it's very common to have like a boys toy aisle and a girls toy aisle, because if they share, that means they're buying only one thing. But if you need to buy two things because they're antithetical, like conceptually to one another, then you're buying more things.
I wouldn't
right?
play with Barbies though. I don't know. Like my friend
Barbies
and
are awesome.
my
didn't
friend
play
and
with
I
Barbies.
wanted to like play pranks on the sister and like wanted to like take the Barbie's head off and do like, you know.
Yeah, well, that's still playing with Barbie though.
I guess,
I
but
think,
it's more
like,
of
one
like
of the things.
Yeah, it is.
go for
Anyway.
it, Morgan.
Talking
No, but
about-
then there's
But
G.I.
toys are,
Joe,
like,
and
gendered
then
for that reason, and that extends to the internet at large politically. It's like if you have more and more niches, then you can sell to more and more people. So if you have like, you know, if you live in a civil society where like most people tend to get along, most people may have differing opinions about things, but they can generally still like have a conversation, find common ground, you know. That creates like fewer clicks.
Yeah.
That creates less investment. People are less willing to engage. Like fighting on the internet is big business.
But
You know?
it is big business, but it's not just that for me. I think that part of an evolution of any kind of publication, anything that people put out, I think it's something that requires people to gain experience. The only way that I see any of us gaining experience, and not to say that we aren't experienced in the things that we specialize in the most, but I really think that this is something that I try to do with BTR as well. It's something that requires a lot of, you know, a lot of pushing in directions that people may be reluctant to go down, just so whatever it is that people think is the right way forward can be tested over time.
But yeah, so Rag, you were saying about the online, like, not just the online world, but also in general. What is the sort of the Schelling point of discourse, if you will? Like, what is to go forward? I mean, I just linked like this apparently this guy's an editor of Jacobin magazine. So of course, Lev, if you could scroll up,
the food,
saying that it's like right-wing identity politics to enjoy red meat. It is kind of, but it's like this.
Yeah,
but see, this is again the dragon for me. Like I was saying with Owen Cyclops,
But
and I also want to get
like
and I also want to get to Morgan. But the only thing about something like that, Geo, is like when I see that, it's like that definitely looks like a juicy enemy to clobber over the head with, because it's
but
so.
It's just very like urbanite, like if that, like.
But it's so two-dimensional. It's so two-dimensional. It's an
yeah.
easy target. That's my only point. It's such an easy fucking target because these are idiots that put this stuff out. It's an easy target. My whole point is let's get things a little bit more difficult. Let's get things a little bit more nuanced when it comes to the kind of.
But even that, like
thing.
even diet itself has become another outlet of politics. Like you even have people in the comments I'm scrolling through about, you're gonna give yourself bowel cancer, which by the way is bullshit about meat.
Yes.
But anyways, that's
absolutely.
We keep cutting you off, Rag. Then I want to get Remus and
and also delivered Morgan.
involved.
He had something to say as well, but go for it, Rag.
So what do you want me to talk about?
The online discourse, Geo, you were talking about
sure.
how exactly it's going to change, but also I would be interested in you commenting on what I was talking about as well, about how something can gain experience over time from challenging itself with ideas that may be contrary to it.
Sure. I mean, my first instinct is that anybody from the other side of or from as far on the other side as I am on this side, is just likely to want to shut down man's world more than anything. That must be our the main takeaway from the past 4 or 5 years, that it's just about who controls the territory, who has access to the means of disseminating information. So I'm a bit cynical about that. I don't want to be too open.
Do you think it's possible because it's because the kind of people that you were exposed to were again these idiot dragons, like the stupid Twitter thing with the meat that Gio brought up here. These are imbeciles, and these are not people who.
But it's a funny meme to see Alex Jones.
Yeah. No, but like my idea is like if you were to bring on, let's say, for example, the Slater Codex people, I don't think it would be the same thing. I really don't. Yes, exactly. Like I think there are people who are willing to talk.
They have to really drag themselves through the broken glass right
and they
now
fucking
to,
will, and they fucking will.
Themselves. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, Rog. Sorry.
Go for it.
I mean, it's like all this stuff with CampBot. This is the first time I've talked about CampBot, but like it's a difference of opinion results in these kind of desperate attempts to dox people, and so I don't want to preach to the choir, but I feel like I am preaching to the choir, and that's probably the sort of people who are going to read Man's World are the sort of people who probably hold the same kind of ideas that I hold anyway. I think it can have a broader appeal, but it's going to have a broader appeal to people who are inclined in that direction anyway, like the sort of people who listen to Red Scare podcasts and all that kind of stuff aren't going to be interested. I mean, they might look at it and have a laugh and write some snarky Twitter post about it or report it or whatever, but
well, these are also like big mainstream figures you're talking about. I mean, relatively speaking, they were able to become mainstream thanks to certain political connect. I'm not going to get into that right now. Anyway, but there are people out there, though, for example, like a certain, I don't know, like, for example, we had Professor Sean Lang, who is at a David Ruskin University in England. And that is a pretty big university from what I understand. And he came on. We're going to have a sewing discourse with him on March 23rd. And this is not somebody who is like a darling of the press. He's not even associated with that. But he's a historian, a British historian, who, has a lot of interesting ideas and ways of looking at history. So it's not even for the sake of some press here is this magazine that everybody in the world should know about. I understand that this is more of a niche thing. My only point is, let's bring in people who may not necessarily be with it to be able to test
Sure.
it out, and they don't have to be like big media people at all.
No, yeah, no, I would definitely be, I would definitely be open to that. What I worry, or what I would worry in those circumstances, is that people like that probably wouldn't necessarily. I may be wrong. People like that probably wouldn't want to contribute because they might think that the personal costs or the professional costs might be too high.
Well, that's the big experiment right now, and we're not doing a bad job, honestly, right, Gio? Like,
yeah, no, it's true, and he was really good, and I'm glad that we're gonna have him again. But and among many examples, but let me go at it in terms of the critique of man's world, because you mentioned the certain person that we've had tussles with. What is the critique that man's world is like LARPy, or it's featuring literature from people who are quote unquote not serious literature? It's more of like relics of the 20th century that the people in MFA. They probably do read Mishima in MFA programs. Probably not though. But that's not the serious literature. Ernst Jünger and Mishima, and that is like just the remnants of like fringo right-wing groups, and it's not like it's not, put it this way, it's not Thomas Picton, right? So it's what do you think of that criticism? Yeah, what do you think of the criticisms that have been landed against Men's World, or Dork's World in particular? So
God, I don't know. I mean, I try not to listen to them too much, but I do. I mean, I don't see that Mishima or Jung are necessarily I mean, they're historical figures, obviously, but I don't think that the things that they're talking about are anachronistic at all. I mean, you only need to read that Junger piece to see that that's the blood combat as inner experience. You only need to read that to see that it's not just a period piece. It's dealing with something universal. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are larpy about Junger and Mishima, in the same way that there are plenty of people who are larpy about Marx or Hegel or Kant, even.
Mm-hmm.
But the intention, I think, behind it. Well, I mean, I know that the intention behind it is an honest one. I'm not. I am genuinely trying to create a forum where people can come together to talk about the sort of things that men should talk about. I mean, that's possibly a bit simplistic, but
What does that mean?
yeah,
Seriously?
I shouldn't have said that. Well, I don't know.
Like how to check your testicles for cancer? Come on.
No, maybe
What
not that.
should men
but
be
like,
talking about that women shouldn't be?
I think it's important for there to be separate spaces for men and women, for sure.
Yeah, no, me too, honestly. That's kind of, there's a whole lot of debate surrounding that, actually. I mean, are you of the opinion that like there should be gentlemen's clubs and like,
Yeah, of course.
golf courses where women are not allowed?
Of course, yeah, of course.
What about, or if,
There are women's club where men aren't allowed. You remember there was a big stink about this New York social club that was for women, and then men entered there as well, and the women didn't like that.
The idea behind that is that women need women's spaces because, and this is true, this is backed up statistically, that women tend to get steamrolled by men in conversations. Women are generally dominated by men in many situations, including conversations, in general, the sphere, the world in general, so women having a separate space for women is a feminist issue, like by and large. Like if you don't have space away from men, then
the other end, like the other, yeah, that's true. But
the idea that women can't infiltrate men's spaces where potentially the power is concentrated in some direct ways, like it's sort of in the same vein as like, well, would you have a whites only space,
But then at the same time, like you look at the model of the 19th and 20th century health clubs that were like male health clubs, like in Germany, for instance, with that cultivated a certain sort of camaraderie among men.
Oh yeah. I don't believe.
I feel like separate gyms should be
locker rooms. Or like
but that's the argument that perhaps like separate gyms, it shouldn't be taboo. It should be the norm, because the motivation. I feel like, you know, the meme of like, you know, you don't live for women, you live for your bros, right? To admire. So
well, that's also the big secret. The men's locker rooms, that's where all the deals are made that women are not allowed to know about.
But then there's the hermeneutics of suspicion, in that when you when you have sort of a camaraderie among men sincerely, it seems that the logical, not the logical, but rather the gut impulse of like people nowadays is to assume it's like there's a level of homoeroticism there.
Yeah,
like
for
the
sure.
meme, like the stone toss meme about
Yeah.
like the guys admiring, you know, the bodybuilder. People in the comments were saying, well, are they admiring him, or are they gay, right?
I mean,
So-
look at the
and
Spartans.
you
like
say
there was
this-
a lot of you know, this has
Yeah,
happened
but-
throughout history.
in the very
Well,
first
Not really
pay-
comparable.
yeah.
Honestly, I don't like when people do that, because it's like the Spartans were like, when they were at war, you know, there's not going to be any women around, so it's
And they had a
No,
different
I don't think it's just
conception
that
of,
though. I think it's like when you're at war, if you are with somebody who is your buddy, your butt buddy, if you will, although maybe they did it with the thighs, I'm not sure.
No, they had a different concept of sexuality. Like they didn't view it as an identity. But the reason I bring this up is because this is the very first pages of Men's World is to preach a message of male. I know this sounds so like academic LARP. Male spaces, to create spaces for masculinity that is about creating that camaraderie, but isn't necessarily this suspicion of homoeroticism. And you know, again, BAP talks about this. Bronze Age Pervert talks about how, in a way, this like identity politics has infiltrated this notion of the manner bond. So, well, you can talk about this, Ryan, and Alexandra. But Alexandra, you have a good point about the debate of
Yeah,
you
this
know.
is a good opportunity, I think, to discuss, like, is masculinity inherently toxic? I'm going to assume that none of you believe that it is. Like, masculinity
I believe
in
it.
the traditional sense,
It should
men
be toxic, maybe.
being men
Well, it's all
and
complementary.
behaving in
Like
gender stereotypical ways.
masculinity, femininity. It's a complementary thing, I think.
And also, you can have masculine women and feminine men, you
Sure.
know, or whatever you want to call it.
No,
you know.
no femboy. This is a no femboys podcast.
What?
No cat boys. What about
no,
Jules?
no.
No femboys, no cat.
Well, we'll make an exception for
That
Jules.
is terrible. How could you say such a thing?
It's like one of those old segregation signs, but it says no cat
The
boys
only
allowed.
femboys that are acceptable are the ones I follow on Twitter, who are great artists, such as Dandy Man. But other than that, no. But so yeah, if whoever wants to jump in about this issue of like what is a male space and why they're important. So
How
Well, I
about?
think- I mean, I-
go for it.
You're gone. No, gone. Oh, I was just going to say, I think that the death of mystery between the sexes has been a disaster for relations between the sexes, and I think that some attempt to restore some mystique.
That's a
Even
really
if it-
good point. I do agree. There's a bit too much infiltration betwixt these arenas, and now everybody's fucking bored with each other.
Like
Nobody
shared
really
shared
gets along. There's just a lot of sort of petty infighting and squabbling, and honestly, people are like way less tolerant. Oh fuck, of like differences. I think people are less tolerant of just like somebody's different from you, and you have to respect that. And there's this sort of idea that like, well, everybody needs to be more the same than ever, because otherwise, you know, we can't possibly get along. And you know, just the idea that like there was once a time when men and women inhabited different spheres, you know, the domestic sphere and the public sphere, and that there wasn't a lot of intersection there. And you know, the whole idea of like a feminine mystique, that's gone. Women show their pussies on OnlyFans, like just, you know, your mothers and sisters and stuff are like on OnlyFans right now. And
Gio, did you hear that? Your mom is on
oh my
OnlyFans.
god,
it's true. It's true.
There was this one tweet about I forget who it was that said, imagine like those kids of Zoomers, you have children growing up with single mothers who are 40-year-old girl bosses and 22-year-old OnlyFans. So imagine the children that will be raised by those single moms. So
Well, would they
yeah.
go the other? Would they go
Fine.
the other direction? Because that is the other Paul Joseph Watson meme that Gen Z is lebased and red pilled.
No. Oh well.
So no, that's not really the case at all, is it, Gio?
Well, I've heard some interesting statistics, but anyways, yeah, this whole but not to get off topic, but this notion of difference is another is that in itself is important in terms of just even like the psychological impact of being these homogeneous androgynous beings that the modern world wants to create us as. It
A
seems
desexed generation, really.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
pretty
There is
appropriate,
more. There is the genuine death of eroticism and the desexification of people through that. So yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling.
And a
on
lot
this.
more pornography too. That's the
Which
other
is
thing.
ironic. At the same time, we have more
Well,
pornography
no, it
than
makes
ever.
sense. It would make sense if we sort of live in a deeroticized sort of world, then we need more and more stimulation in order to get off. And so, we do it through a screen, and we do it remotely, and we can pick and choose exactly what kind of pornography we want to consume, what variety, what genre. There's millions now. You can get bespoke pornography. You can go on, the dark web and
Requests, yeah.
order.
You know what
like,
bespoke pornography is, by the way? It's an erotic hotline where you call a bee and it just goes buzz, buzz, buzz in a very erotic way.
Well,
You know,
I saw this
bespoke, it
one.
speaks to you.
I just saw this one tweet with 100,000 likes. OnlyFans isn't a real job. Okay, so I just bought my first flat at 19 years old.
Oh,
with
well, by
OnlyFans.
the way, like
That's-
OnlyFans is such a predatory organization. Like they make there's a lot of like tweets and stuff that are basically produced by the OnlyFans, like the
Yeah,
company
it's
itself,
just
where it's
basically
like, hey, I'm
advertising, yeah.
19 and I just bought a Maserati, and like, because it's a pyramid scheme, by the way. Like if you're in like the top percent and you get other girls to sign up,
Digital pimping.
yeah, it's a pimping thing. It's really sick. Like,
Oh, by the way, this girl only has 4 tweets, so I'm pretty sure this is
Not real.
And by the way, we
What?
also have
Hello, I'm sorry, my connection is pretty terrible, and I can hear most of what's happening. At random points, you guys become robots, but I've got the gist of most. This is a very interesting conversation to listen to. But yeah.
Well, thank you very
It's
much for
pimping.
coming in, Remus. And we also have Brian O'Shea, SBI, back with us. Thank you so much for coming back in, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me. So sorry I'm late. The snow is actually really terrible in the Hudson Valley.
I can imagine things are going down right now. I wonder if it's the grand solar minimum finally coming
We're
into
getting-
effect. Yeah.
I think it's our eighth winter storm in a week or two. It's crazy.
Oh man, the Shevitz. But I'm really happy that you're here. You are a
Thanks for having
veteran.
me.
You were in intelligence, and now you are a private detective, and you are a hell of a knife thrower. In fact, I'm gonna put that video. I'm gonna put that video into the chat right now that you sent me earlier of your amazing knife throwing actions. How long have you been knife throwing, by the way?
2 months.
Just 2 months, and already
2
you are
months,
able
yeah.
to. Here we go. Here's the video. So I'm going to make a large screen for everybody to take a look at. Here it is. And by the way, all the newcomers, don't forget to subscribe right now. Let's see. I don't know why it's so there. Hold on. Here we go. There we go. So you just did that one today.
Can I give a little background on my smug look there?
Sure, go for it.
My business partner, hello everyone. Sorry I'm late. My business partner, who has never thrown a knife, to my knowledge, and is down in Florida, I think, on his couch. I sent that to him as a mindful practice, the first one, and he said, "Oh, it's a little low and off to the left," and that really pissed me off. So I sent him the follow-up one, like, "Oh yeah, all right," and that was it. So that's why I looked a little angry.
Well, I'm really happy that we have this opportunity right now for you to talk to the raw egg nationalist, because there is a feeling that I think Raw Egg would be able to describe better than I would, that people are feeling today on the internet, why they are drawn to a lot of these more traditional things that Man's World, which is the magazine that Raw Egg Nationalist came out with right now, is bringing into the table. And I want to have a conversation about this because I'm not sure if you are as acquainted with this kind of, Bronze Age mantis slash pervert slash Bronze Age mindset worldview. So, Raw Egg, would you be able to describe for people who are curious about this but don't really know what exactly this is, how would you be able to describe it simply?
What Right Wing Bodybuilders Twitter or Man's World?
I like the avatar.
Well, that definitely is simple. I'd say it's too simple. Is there any way that we could get more meat on that bone as far as what exactly that means, and why do you think it is getting more in demand among this particular side of Twitter?
I mean, the simple answer is that it's a backlash against the march of progressive woke culture. I mean, that's the answer that most people would go with, and I think that there's obviously some truth in that. I think there's obviously people are waking up to just how absurd things are getting in mainstream culture. I think in mainstream culture too. I think even quite normally people are noticing.
Okay, so here in my personal experience, I live in Brooklyn, which is in New York City, and my personal experience of like the march of like progressive culture and such is like it hasn't been too bad. Like, okay, I go to the Apple store and the employees have the pronouns on their like on their shirt on their tags, and it's like,
yikes.
My reaction is like, wow, I'm really glad I live in a liberal democracy. Like, I don't know, I don't really have like a big problem with it. I think sort of the insanity and the sort of the online realm is I've used the word realm a lot in this stream, but yeah, in the online realm, I think is when like sort of wokeness and progressivism is at its most like absurd and annoying. I noticed that very early on, like circa like 2008, when like all the sort of like liberal politics blogs that I would read sort of got increasingly weird and like just infighty. And people would fight over really stupid shit. In the real world, like as far as I've experienced, people are much smarter. There's always going to be like sort of crazy, very online people, but they're going to be crazy and very online, And obviously, like the influences things, and there's things definitely you need to watch out for. But like, I don't know. I don't feel like I have like I don't need to like pronounce my pronouns every time I meet a new person. I don't like, I don't need to really do much. My life hasn't changed very much, in the last 10 or 11 years, when this like sort of the wokeness has sort of.
But you could say though that you are not like a young white man. So as far as being a young white man, like how are all these things affecting them? And there is also a tendency to also look at, you just mentioned right now, liberalism. There is a tendency, Gio, let's face it, there is a tendency to look at liberalism among these circles as something that is untenable and something that eventually leads to this rabid wokeness and things will only get worse from here. So, like Raw Egg, would you agree with that?
It's not going to bite you.
Well, is it? I don't know.
It's just an irritant that I sometimes run into, again, mostly online. The very few times I've encountered anything that's really sort of given me pause in the outside world is generally something I can like discuss with people and they're open to like talking about. And I don't know if I even have like a particular advantages as a young white woman as opposed to a young white man.
Young white women run the earth now, so very much you are in the you are the face of power. A youngish white woman. That is the or white presenting. That would be a
white
good.
I mean, technically, I'm white ethnic.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I also like the he laugh. There was a bit of a he laugh in there. That was that was really cool. So So Raw Egg, back to you. When it comes to this dissatisfaction with liberalism, what exactly are people then trying to aim for, not just in their personal lives? Because again, if it was just about personal responsibility, then, you know, like, okay, like lift some weights, you know, like have a better diet, and that's pretty much where it ends. But it's more than that. It feels like it is trying to touch to something deeper, something that would aim people for a higher purpose. But I may not be saying that exactly correctly.
No, that's exactly what I'd say. I would say that
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the liberalism and the subtleties, sort of which the language sort of gets into, how it impacts our perceptions of the world, and why something like the raw egg offers the man's world raw egg, like sort of sphere, offers a different sort of worldview for people. And I think what it is that it is a reframing of the imagination, because we experienced in the post-Reformation era this really radical desacramentalization of the world, and you lose a lot of the mystery and these things which really were foundational in the medieval era and prior to. And
well, I mean,
with the
progress of science, like our world has been mapped. There's a demystification of everything because of the sort of the immense riches of information, but also how we've sort of conquered the earth. Like basically,
what's in framing, really,
the depths of the sea, we haven't really, you know, there's a lot going on down there we don't know about, and also, you know, in the depths of space. But in terms of like our planet, we know where everything is. We can, you know, fucking like fire a missile and hit
it's not
some
a
remote
cosmic
location.
issue, it's a metaphysical issue.
Oh yeah,
it's
but the metaphysical,
issue.
Well, how about okay, so Morgan, then Morgan, then raw egg, then then Alexandria,
and also
I know
Brian.
Alexandria. I know Alexandria. You talked about how men dominate. In the conversation, which is true.
I mean, we can't forget
in
Brian.
Grad school, I mocked quite a few.
I mean, literally, you're louder. You're louder. You have like more lung capacity. You're physically larger. Like when you talk, it's literally like you will talk over another person because women's voices tend to be higher and softer. Like that's just it. It's not even something conscious that you might do.
Alexandra, I just want to point out that you just talked over him.
So okay, Morgan, please finish your point, and then I feel like we're cutting off Ryan Nash, but Morgan, finish your point, then Ryan Nash, then Alexandria. By the way, rate my
kind of idea.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The kind of idea of what I'm getting at is like we're at a crux in the like post-Lockean, post-liberal idea where we're seeing these competitive metaphysical views of the world. It's not necessarily about the scientific aspect demystifying it. It's about what's going to fill the void of what was demystified. And you have this like the critical race theory and all of these other things capturing the imagination by creating these infinite dialectics, which you can chase down for all eternity in pure psychological agony. Or you have something like the raw eggisms and like other things like that, which offer you a way to vitality, health, and these other things, which is more deeply entrenched into your bodily existence. And I think it's becoming so large because of the fact that it is something that promotes vitality and virility, but it hasn't reached a point of decadency. And you know, where we're not getting to the point where it's like, you know, with the raw egg shakes being essentially a custard mix and consuming that on the daily, there is a real danger on a sort of spiritual sense to give into like a concupiscible sort of appetite and build off of that. But I think the ideas behind physical strength, physical conditioning, and, you know, a sort of meta, like a knowledge growth basis really tapers in a lot of these, you know, otherwise frowned upon aspects of human nature. And this offers a much more appealing view to capture the human imagination in the modern era.
I think that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, my man's just summed it up perfectly. That's exactly what it is.
But then the question is,
Well-
if that's the problem, what is the solution that's beyond just a personal solution?
Well, it's not. The thing is that it's personal, but it's also built. What we have to realize is that this has been ingrained into society for at least 500 years. Like, what we don't realize is that
Yeah.
capitalism's been so ingrained, and this is not me coming from a communist perspective, because they're just a capitalist by different means. It's been so ingrained, this religion of progress and scientific method and everything like that. Capitalism predates Newton, which in turn feeds into Newton's sort of cosmology and metaphysic of, you know, what is the cosmos itself. And I'll be very quick on this tangent, but it's like his view of what space is. He calls it a vacuum. And it's like a vacuum makes no metaphysical sense. And, you know, what is it but the ancient concept of the aether that we've proved today with dark matter? The issue that we're having.
Oh no.
He'll be back. I mean, sometimes it cuts off, so...
Hey, can I just, so I don't get too lost here,
Sure.
so is raw egg a movement? I'm not really that well versed on it.
Well, it's part of a greater movement of esoteric right-wing bodybuilders who are into various sources of arcane knowledge, in my opinion.
Yeah. Our sources of arcane knowledge all come from a capitalist metaphysic.
So, like, what types of knowledge? Like,
Well,
in
certainly,
general?
certainly. There's a lot of
on your balls.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of
on your balls.
Hellenism. There's a lot of discovering writers who were blacklisted by academic establishments. There's a lot of, I mean, if you want to go really esoteric, there's the whole Indo-European stuff. But generally, there is this sort of revival of looking at the body as a way to the soul, if you will. And there's this big emphasis on the beauty in the sort of aesthetics of being is something that can be perfected. It's something that violates, I would say, the liberal anti-metaphysics of sameness, to say that, no, I will be exceptional. My body will be exceptional.
I mean, look, let's just talk about the elephant in the room for a second, which is that we have seen in the 20th century there were regimes who took that and ran with it, and we've seen the results of that.
Yeah, but
so
I know that's going to inevitably come up, but it's just so I don't know. Like,
but it touches on
like,
a very important thing, which is, again, this dynamic of being against progress and seeing progress as a negative.
It's not against progress per se. It's
well,
against
progress as it's defined today.
Exactly.
And that's what I want to get into. Like, what is the progress that is defined today that is seen as being the wrong way forward, and how
can lifting weights help me destroy liberalism?
There we go. That's what I want to get into. Yeah.
Here's a deep part of it, and Lev, this is important, and I'm going to reference Pius XII's Mitbrenniger Sorge, where he uses a very specific word in reference to the German people when he was doing the denunciation of Nazism. And that word was Volksgemeinschaft. And I can't put a precise definition on it because it's very rough to translate into English, but the essence of that work was a refutation of, like Gio said, liberalism's anti-metaphysic of sameness, but not an extolation of one particular group over another, but rather giving to each group what is properly due to them by their human dignity in accordance with, you know, God's will or God's law. And of course, this is coming from a Catholic background, so that those qualifiers have to be in place. But the larger part of this is not necessarily a viewing of the body as a gateway to the soul, because I think that's a sort of like this antecedent Gnostic idea, but it's rather by developing the body to get to the capabilities of which it once had, man is able to grow to a greater attunement with the spiritual life. because we are so, I've mentioned this in, I think, one of my first talks on this show, is we are so far removed from our physical capabilities, from the ancients, from the, I mean, shit, even the 19th century. We're so far removed and so much less capable that any form of development of this seems to hit a brick wall when we're talking about this this idea of what progress looks like on an individual basis.
I would be very interested.
Does that make any sense?
Well, it does make sense, but I would be interested in Brian's response to that, because Brian, from what I know, you are more in the libertarian-leaning direction. But would you have a reply to this kind of system?
I mean, to me, and I do apologize. I was just invited recently, so but it just sounds to me like common sense. I mean, if you, and I agree with the body being the gateway to the soul, but I would say more of a balance is a gateway to the soul, sharpening your body, sharpening your mind, sharpening your relationships. And to think that anyone would think the focus on, you know, making your body as perfect as you can with what you've got, that to me seems like not progress. That seems like regression. So, and, you know, I think even if you go back, I'm Catholic, we're raised Catholic. And if you really look at the Bible or a lot of religious texts, I mean, they kind of have health manuals in them. So, you know, things like, you know, fish on Friday or fasting, they didn't have refrigeration back then. So it makes sense that things like pork wouldn't be eaten, that sort of thing. So, you know, it seems to me that, you know, these things were already built in. And I think everyone knows, and there's probably numerous studies out there, that, you know, brain activity is greatly enhanced by your physique, how healthy you are. So I would say that, you know, not to go down this rabbit hole, but I would say that anything that speaks out against doing the best you can with the body you have and getting it as perfect and exceptional as you can, anyone who speaks against that probably wants to subjugate you. That'd be my guess.
Wow.
Oh yes, that is. I mean, there's plenty of people who even say that you know, this type of endeavor of bodybuilding is like this terrible
It's
fascist. It's fascism. Yeah. Well,
bodybuilding. Wow. Well, that's because they either maybe it was some dude that lost his girlfriend to a bodybuilder. I mean, you just never know what the motivation is that best starts it out. I mean,
he lost it to Chad.
The Chad.
But if I can take it a step further, though, we're not just here talking about individual cultivation of one's body, or even somebody reading a magazine that would inspire them to get better, you know, inside and out. What we're still talking about here, though, is I think that there is a tendency in people who are reading a lot of this stuff to think like, man, like, it sucks right now. If only we had some kind of a political system that would enable more people who may not be as, like we were talking about yesterday, Brian, not as individualistic to lift themselves up, that we would have a system wherein people would be able to be lifted up in the same kind of movement. Now, I don't want to make something of this that it is not, so I want to make sure, Raw Egg Nationalist, would you agree that that is kind of also something in people's minds when it comes to improving society, that they do long for some kind of an order that would enable people to, you know, get their shit together, basically, but in not an individualist sense, but more in an organized political sense?
Of course. I mean, I think there's a very, one of the primary aspects of this whole movement is the fraternity of people who are involved, you know, and that's one of the things about Man's World, is that it's like, I mean, maybe one of the criticisms is that a lot of the people who write in it are my friends online. Well, maybe so, but there's something to be said for the virtue of loyalty and of doing things for your friends, you know, and they just so happen to be good writers as well. I mean, I think it is it's simultaneously individualistic and anti-individualistic. Yeah, I would definitely say that.
Can I expand off of that real quick and
Sure.
talk about something that Alexandria was mentioning earlier when we were talking about, like, the discussion, is masculinity toxic? And I think one of the things that is to be considered in mind is that every aspect of human nature has an end. And what we've seen over the last, 70 years now is been a divorce of these subjects from the human itself. And so I think it is a fair question whenever you say, is masculinity toxic? And I think that in my estimation, the answer would be in its isolation, yes, because masculinity separated from its natural ends, which would be for the love and service of another, be it a wife, be it a flock in the case of a priesthood, or be it, for your neighbor. Like, and I think this is kind of what like Roig's getting at with, like, he's talking about these people who are his friends writing these articles. It's not necessarily a form of the toxicity comes from the isolation of that aspect of the human nature and the development of it in isolation, because then it removes that aspect of masculinity from its natural end and makes it something very abusable in a very real way that has come back on a lot of women and other men as well.
The commodification of masculinity, the idea that we should be being sold a brand of masculinity that is unhealthy.
Well, that's another topic of criticism that I wanted to bring up, is that what is the difference between an authentic expression of a hyper masculinity and something that is, well, I mean, toxic is the lingo, but let's just say a caricature of masculinity, because it seems that there is an overt focus on the strength and power of the masculine, but that has to, I feel, become more meaningful by being integrated within a larger whole. And the strength that we talk about hopefully would be different than just the caricature in people's minds that of talk when they say toxic masculinity. But then that's what I mean. I guess that's the question of LARPing, right? Like, what is the authentic from the LARP? Like, what is treating masculinity as some kind of MMORPG game, and what is
hasn't it always been LARPing,
right?
to a certain extent? Maybe back in the good old days as well, like people were playing out certain characters a la Shakespeare. But also, don't forget to subscribe. All the new people who are watching this right now, subscribe right now. But anyway, Roig, I would love for you to comment on Gio's question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the LARPing thing is something that I do think about a lot when I'm, producing any of my content, really. And sometimes I do step back from some of the stuff that I do. I mean, I suppose you've got to distinguish between LARPing and just having an ideal. And I think that obviously having an ideal is very, very important. And I don't think when you're aiming towards an ideal necessarily you're LARPing. I think LARPing is. It's hard to define. I mean, LARPing when you see it, but it's actually quite hard to define it. I mean, I didn't want the magazine to be like a parody of masculinity, where it was just a total focus on the body and like muscular bodybuilders and all that kind of stuff. I wanted it to have a genuine intellectual core as well, and to be balanced.
In my experience, LARPing is it's a game. There's a sense like you're taking the piss, you're just playing around. It's you're not being very serious about it. If you take it very seriously, I think it's gone beyond LARPing and into a lifestyle.
Yeah, but as far as go on.
No, I was just going to say. I mean, part of the problem I think is that it's difficult today not to look at the great masculine, let's say the great masculine examples from the past, and feel a certain sense of inadequacy. Like, it's quite obvious that very few men, probably no men today, measure up that favorably against Julius Caesar or against Alexander the Great, or even against more minor examples from history. And so there is, it's almost like there's unavoidably an element of ironizing that goes into worshipping or even just looking at these people for for an example, because it's so obvious how far, in a sense, we've fallen from their position.
But also technology makes it so that certain positions that back then would have made a lot of sense to have a Julius Caesar in that particular role, today I doubt that that particular system would work. And it was also compared an article I read recently to trying to run like a modern Windows computer on like Windows 3. Or run modern programs on Windows 3.1. It's like certain things, they are there for their particular time and they're really effective at that time. Like world leaders that existed, back in the day, they would have been considered to be like, today they would be considered to be bloodthirsty dictators, but we don't judge them by today's standards. We judge them by the standards of the day, wherein they are respected, respected kings like Alexander the Great.
I think the differences between, that's the point also, is like, we don't look at Caesar and go, man, he was such a great administrator. We look at Caesar as a guy who took the Roman Empire. Like that takes a certain type of man to do that. You can't just, that's the difference. I think most modern men wouldn't measure up to literal bum farmers back in the day. Like they would destroy your life.
We should be a little bit careful though. Joking. We should be a little bit careful though. Just to be like,
life.
Sure, they are harder.
They actually have to do stuff.
But as far as thinking,
do things, they have to imagine that. Imagine living a world where if you break your leg, you die.
Yeah.
If it just makes you different. So that's what I mean. It's not necessarily that they're Herculean gods. That's not what I'm talking about. They're not Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's created by the technology that is a gym and all of that. It's that they could unironically kill 10 Arnold Schwarzeneggers because that's their life.
That's true.
And with a shovel, not a weapon.
And I don't want to go all Joe Rogan here, but a chimpanzee would be able to kill them as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Can I jump in here?
Even there is the degradation. But
true. That was another conversation we were talking about before. With the men.
The point is this: is that they did stuff that we can't. That's why looking back at them is like, damn, what have we become? That's the real.
Well, I want to go to.
Man, he was a really good king.
Well, then, Brian, you had something to say?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that it is entirely disregarded the physical capabilities of, let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, men. I mean, if you look at the average CEO's height in America, it's 6 feet tall, and they tend to be the average height is 6 feet tall. And if you I won't even say get out of the United States, just around the United States. So in my job, now I drive everywhere because I'm not wearing a mask for 6 hours. But so I work on a Native American reservation for a very wealthy company, and it still comes down like the COO, the guy who is running all the cattle herds and the people that handle the cattle, and they have a tobacco plant and a concrete company. They do half the Northwest's concrete and asphalt. He's a really tough guy, and they wouldn't know what toxic masculinity was. They would just call that misogyny, or you're an asshole and you get fired if you talk to anyone in a shitty way. But the thing is, he's well respected by men and women because he's fair, he's understanding, he's empathetic. But also, you know that there's a lot of jobs out there, a lot of them, where you kind of have to be able to physically handle yourself, or you won't have the respect of the crew. You just won't, even if you're the boss. And I've seen this play out so many times. And out there's one of them, on ranches, which are big. I mean, all our beef comes from California, Texas, parts of the Northwest. You're not going to be a cow boss if you cannot do, if you can't rope a cow, if you can't ride better than everyone else, if you cannot kick someone's ass who gets in your face, to put it bluntly, and they don't care. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that looking towards a Caesar type figure is completely dead everywhere. I would say definitely in more gentrified industries such as programming or coding, and which is why it's absurd when I heard them say that the coal miners can just throw in coding. I don't see that ever happening. Yeah. That's just not. And so I wouldn't disregard it. And then there's also, when I was in a unit called First Special Forces. I was not a Green Beret. I was a military intelligence detachment. But we went all over Southeast Asia. And you had to show up looking like you could rip someone's head off constantly. Because there's a lot of cultures out there that very much still do they look at you first before they get to know you, and they've already made their judgment. You could be the nicest person in the world, and this is men and women too. It's not just men. But if you look like, hey, if we get out in the jungle, I could probably kill you and take your really cool American M4A1. That's probably going to happen, and you have to show up ready to looking like a Caesar, if you will. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, that is a good point. And another thing that I find, like, looking throughout history is it not the case that people have always been saying, like, our generation sucks, like, our fathers and our grandfathers, they were much better than we are? Like, isn't that a continual thing? And
No, well, the boomers were the first to say the opposite, that they're the best.
Ah, yes, and, that's right. The fucking boomers.
That is true. That is true. That is the case. Basically every Roman generation did this. They pretended that their ancestors were way cooler than them, and the new people suck. Thought of that.
Every dynasty in China as well did that.
They thought that about Caesar, in fact, when he was a young man, because he was very foppish and kind of like he was new rich in a way. Well, he was old family, but they flaunted their money.
He wore these like longish robes, which was considered to be long, like the bad boy tokens. Style. Yeah.
He was like he was very much a like flamboyant David.
He was
Bowie
like John
Travolta
person. And Get Shorty.
But then he was also at the same time a vicious general, right? So
True, yeah.
These things weren't. It wasn't impossible to be both in their world. That's what's kind of interesting about them, right? In that they handled, in this conversation about the masculine, they handled masculinity in a very different way. Like the way that they thought of being a man was different. Essentially, you had to prove it. Like you couldn't talk about it. You had to just be. And then,
I would say,
then you can be as weird as you want.
Oh,
and by the way, I love that avatar. I was going to say too, but there's, especially with Caesar and the history of Rome, I think things were looked at. It's very much like Manhattan and Northern New York, where I'm at. It's two different worlds. And so I from my recollection, it's rusty of Roman history, is what was going on inside of Rome was a lot different than what was going on in the Roman Empire, because as you definitely would know, what were they called? The foederate, where they would envelop like a local culture that they conquered. So he kind of had to show on the battlefield that he was a bloodthirsty killer, because A, it's battle. You kind of have to kill the other guy to win. And B, a lot of these people didn't even speak their language. So they're seeing every assumption they're making about Caesar, they're making it with how the other soldiers respect him and how he handles himself on the battlefield. Whereas it had to be really difficult, I think, when he had to go report to Rome and tell them what was going on, because he was probably pulling. And I've been there. Like I've gone when I first got out of the military, or when I was in the military, and I had to go speak to, some law firm in New York. It was really difficult because I was in battle mode, and then you have to transition out of battle mode into society mode. And so he was doing that constantly, just crossing the walls of Rome. And, unless I'm incorrect, but that's how I understood it.
Well, another thing that I would love
you
to...
can't,
Go on, Remus.
You couldn't be a soldier in Rome. As soon as you came in, you're a civilian automatically. Mm-hmm. So like whatever privileges you had are gone. You have to disband your army. Nobody could be armed. That kind of thing.
That was the whole crossing the Rubicon thing. That's why that was such a big fucking deal.
I mean, can you imagine though? Like you just got done like fighting like barbarians for a year, and
done genociding the Celts.
Yeah, eating raw eggs by the fire.
You came back from Germania, and then
I wonder if they did eat raw eggs back then. Like, would they have considered that to be kosher? The ancient Romans?
They would have considered it to be efficient.
Probably, but today the environment that we have though is like people are talking about Oswald Spengler's book Decline of the West, And I think that the perception is that even though people may have said back in the day, like, oh, our forefathers were much cooler and better than we were, the perception is right now, like I talked about this in the last China episode that we did, that people are afraid that we're a lot weaker, a lot more childish, and that eventually, if we don't have some strong leadership, something's gonna give way. So again, I am all for example, like with Man's World magazine, people being able to meet each other and help each other grow, get families and, do things that would help out their neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. What I would be against, though, is something like this repeating other things that have happened in very recent history, where people gather around and then think, you know what, why don't we make this thing like full political and start gaining support and then institute a top-down regime that would make sure everybody eats their raw eggs and, builds up their body and all that. And since you're a libertarian, Brian, I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on that, because that is the wave that people are concerned about when it comes to movements of such a type, and I'm not going to ignore that shit either.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of hypocrisy for those people that are scared of that, because they're usually the ones that are, calling for top-down rule and telling you how much salt you can have in your diet, or telling you what you can say on Twitter. So it's not, I think, that they're worried about that. They're worried about being unseated, in my opinion. But I'm against anything that's going to tell anyone how to be and to be a certain way, or you're wrong. And I really feel that when we go against these things or force these things, we're going against nature. I think men as a gender have to, as children, get outside and wrestle and do things and bruise their knees and everything. And even my own son, who's 9, when he's learning how to ride a bike recently.
When is he going to learn to throw the axe?
Oh, he's already, he can throw. He could do a no spin throw at about 4 feet. It was pretty good.
Nice.
But
also need to be physical.
I'll send it. Definitely share that link, Lev. That guy is awesome. That's where I learned, was from that dude on YouTube. But the thing is, like, what I find is that, people who are telling anyone how to, like, I think it's just as impressive if, like, my sister was severely crippled and she bumped the trend, and she can't be a bodybuilder. But she, did things that blew my mind. Like, she left home, went to college, she got a job, she got married. And that's impressive to me. So I think anytime you have a system that defines certain parameters, whether I agree with them or not, but anytime you try to force everyone into one particular mold, how unspecific that is, that's not going to work for everyone. And that's why I'm always advocating for, be the best that you can be, and don't try to tell anyone what their best is. Their best is up to them. But I would also say to the people that are thinking this is, how America is and it's the decline of the West, I think they need to leave their studies that they're doing in the cities and go to all the states in the Union, because it's a lot different every state you go to. It's a lot different just going from, I lived in the West Village for 4 years. And I'll tell you, there are some pretty effeminate guys, I'd say, that I would not
Did
mess
you go
with
to the Equinox in the West Village by any chance?
I've been to it a couple times. It was it wasn't my scene, man. But
it's a good gym though. It has a pool. That's a plus.
There's too many floors. Like, for instance, like, I don't like having to go 3 floors to get to my elliptical.
Good for the legs though? No.
Well, I use the elevator. It's New York. Who uses stairs?
Well, I'm certainly not going to judge you for using the elevator. But
I would say real quickly, Lev, when sorry, I'm very talkative because I've been in the woods alone with a fluffy little dog for many months, named Mushroom. But the thing is, what I noticed is when the pandemic happened, we had some young people show up here. They had to leave college and they'd grown up in the city. They didn't have their licenses yet because they'd grown up in the West Village in New York and Lower Manhattan. And at first, when you see people come up here, they're like, oh my gosh, and then looked, was that a spider? Is that, what is that thing? And then give it a month, and I could see like just the strut would happen, and they're out there like, you know, chopping down trees, and they loved it. They loved it, and all of them miss it, and they always come back, and they all want to come back. So I guess I'd leave this with, before I could even, you know, ask anyone what their judgment on the state of men in the country is, I would say go walk, go do something that you've never done before with other types of men, and see how you like, and women, I'm using the term neutrally, and see, you know, just see what they're really made of. Because CNN, for instance, is like toxic masculinity, but then they did a whole report on why, you know, Biden's more masculine than Trump. I mean, you know, so a lot of it.
But see, that's the thing.
And then Alexandra, she had her hand up, but go on,
Yeah.
Jim.
That's all I.
Oh no, I just wanted to say, like, that was me. That was that I grew up in the West Village. And sorry, just.
But
see, there used to be a number of hippie publications back then, like the Village Voice and all that have been destroyed by forces of capital. But no, it seems that to go back to the question of LARPing, it ties in this sort of selection, the selective granting and then withdrawing of masculinity by the media, the culture industry. It seems that even to me, when I think of masculine LARPing, I'm thinking of taking what is ostensibly symbols of masculinity and derooting them and turning them into consumer products. So for example, people on Reddit that like use, I'm not casting shade, I've used it myself, but people that use like beard wax and people that talk about, like bacon and what is another thing? Like they basically take these empty symbols of masculinity and they Reddify them and they turn them into
grilling.
Grilling.
Yeah, I love grilling.
Even lifting weights in a way can be made this way. There's a lot of things that can become Reddified by
there's a certain air to it. Like
how it just becomes an archetype. Yeah, that's the LARP. It's the difference between that and
having people that like work for tech companies that buy like a Ford F-150 or something like.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's awesome. They're status signaling. It's status signaling rather than like necessity. It's not practicality. They're not doing it because they need it.
Yeah.
Oh, Gomer said Manscaped. That's another one.
Manscaping, like that. The whole thing about like
Dr. Squatch.
Yeah, shaving your balls with this trimmer.
And also,
I don't think that's very masculine.
And what about man cave? There was another term.
Man cave. There you go. That if you're a man, your whole house should be your kingdom.
Man cave is the ultimate manifestation of this.
Even worse though, not just the man cave. Do you remember that post on 4chan with like a video game station that the wife allowed the man to get? You know, just like.
And the guy said I had access to adult money. That's why I could build this rig. Like, what the fuck?
Well, that's like in Japan. In Japan, the wives give the husbands a certain allowance for the week to us. That's always been the case.
They used to. Keep in mind that only literally 60 years before, 70 years before, they were invading Manchuria and
slicing people's skin off and doing all
of the noble samurai bloodlines.
Yes,
died in the war.
That's so noble, like slicing people off, treating them like logs.
Well, I'm not defending Japanese war crimes.
Just a little rape and egg game.
I'm not defending that.
But back to raw egg. Back to raw egg. I'm curious.
Well, actually, Alexander had a point.
Okay, Alexander. Then
very fine Nanking raper.
The Nanking rape graper, 1776. That would be a Twitter handle right now. I'm assuming. So.
Alexandra?
Yes.
Gio said that you had something you wanted to say. No? Okay, then I'm gonna go.
No.
Okay, then I'm gonna go to raw egg.
Then raw egg. So
yes.
Sorry.
So raw egg. What I'm curious about.
Lev, the way you said that was pretty. I don't know.
What? Okay.
Trepidous.
Okay, raw egg. No. When it comes to England, what is the situation there? Because I agree with Brian when it comes to, I really think that a lot of people who are very online end up treating Twitter like it's the world, and making, thinking that a lot of these extreme leftist viewpoints that come out, that this is the world, and maybe it is to some advertisements, but that doesn't mean that a lot of the normies are going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Part of me thinks that the normies don't really give a crap about all of this. They just want to grill, for God's sakes. But tell me, like, your experience in England from the people that you've met and talked with, is that the case there?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I live in a rural area, and it may not sound like it, but I have got one foot in the working class in my family. So I've grown up around manly men who do tough physical jobs. My dad does a very tough physical job, and he's a very tough man. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the majority of people in the countryside that you encounter on a daily basis wouldn't have any truck whatsoever with wokery as such. I mean, you've got like a middle class component, professionals here, people who've come down here from the city, or people who have second homes here, and they're more likely to be reading, leftist newspapers like The Guardian, and they're familiar with corporate HR culture and stuff like that. But the average, I would say, the average working person down here is definitely very different from the sort of person you might assume.
Yeah, and Rod, I would agree with you that it's the same way here. And I just got to say, like, in private security and executive protection, I only worked with Brits because they were badass, and same with the Australians and the South Africans. And not that the Americans were not; they were just a bit too loud. But the thing is, it's that I think, and I wanted to ask you if it's the case in England, Raw Egg. What I find is when I ask people, when I go out to the reservation out in Washington, and I'll ask people, like, man, what do you think of that thing? What happened with Ocasio-Cortez? They're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Because they don't have time to be online all the time. They don't have the kind of jobs that afford them the ability to sit there and tweet in the middle of the day, because and a lot of them don't have the connectivity, because, especially if you're out in some of these, if you're on a construction site and your foreman catches you tweeting, you're probably not gonna have a job. So I think time is a lot of it too. Like, they don't have time for this stuff, like they've got a job to do. They got to get home. When they get home, there's a lot of work to do there. And this is not just ranchers and construction people, but it's just everyday people who are, in more blue collar jobs. And for me, I've seen, and I grew up in a very working class family. And I always try to picture my dad, who, he's no longer with us, but I always try to picture him like reading a tweet, and I could just hear the explicitives coming out of his mouth, like, what a bunch of nonsense this is. So.
I come from very similar backgrounds to you two in my part of Ontario and Niagara. It seems like the same, mostly like semi-rural suburbia, but also like a lot of people, like especially boomers who retire in Toronto, they'll move here and buy a McMansion, and it's like the same nonsense. But at the same time, I feel that when it comes to construction, like my old man owns a small concrete business. There's this weird sort of one of the rare intersections between people who would be considered middle. Well, here in North America, it's different when people in England say middle class, but it's like roughly the same. Like between the middle class and the working class, there's these intersections. I think that there could be a potential for, and again, I think this is what the Men's World magazine's doing, is there's this potential for embodying the values of the working class, but not LARPing, but also being a bit more like intellectual or big brained, like in contextualizing that experience of being, part of the working class, more than just an average person who is working construction or working physical manual labor. I feel that there is a unique space there that has to come about, that is almost forgotten, because people that I knew when I was in university that have a similar working class background, that's people like Justin Murphy talks about this, about what it means to come from a background within, for example, academia. And he was a tenured professor, right, in England, coming from America. And he said, it's like, it was strange because all the people I was with, it's like, I have family members who are in academia, and I come from that white, white collar, urban center type of existence. And so, like, for example, I had the same experience, right? So I feel that these type of publications, what Men's World is trying to do is to bring sort of a more cerebral approach to interests and attitudes that you would find among blue collar people, that you would find among more masculine, archetypally masculine people within the working classes. So I think that's an often neglected space, because it seems that the vast majority of, especially academia, is dominated by what we call the bug men, the bug people, the hive people.
Well, as far as the concern about the bug people, there was a great comment that our great patron, $20 patron, Lance Audette, made here in the chat, and I want to read it out for everybody, because this, I think, really goes to the other concern that people have, which makes them react not only, again, to progressivism, wokeism, but also to liberalism, where they see that if not for liberalism, it wouldn't go down this way, and is there any way to avoid going down this way? Well, anyway, here is the comment, and I would love for everybody to comment on this. So, and also, everybody, please subscribe right now. By the way, let me just... here we go. We have a newcomer, by the way, right now. It goes to... So, 1 second here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, 1 second. So we had Thad Ascendant coming in all the way live. So I just want to bring him in here. Hello, Thad. Thank you so much for coming in. So here is the comment, and I'm curious what you think about this too, Thad. So, every major network of government committees are dominated by a language of equality/equity law and a fair handful of what you could call activist woke. So even in a healthy masculine society, there are changes being made top-down that echo the globalized liberal agenda. Wokeism IRL isn't out of control, it just gets legislated and things slowly get worse. So it's prudent to treat it the way we do. So even with a healthy working middle class, good economy, etc., we have hyper-progressives managing school board committees, government employee union boards, stuff like that. So there we go. That is the comment. And, well, since this is your episode, Raw Egg Nationalist, I would love for you to comment on this first, if you'd like.
Sure. I do think that there is like in a lot of revolutions, there is a revolutionary vanguard at work, and I think that's sort of what he's pointing to. I suppose in a way that there is a small group of people who are legislating for this kind of thing, and that everybody else sort of follows in the wake of their legislation. I mean, I would say that where I live and where I've lived most of my life, then it looks pretty much the same as it did when I was 5 years old. And yet at the same time, it is undeniable that the political climate and the social climate in this country has changed massively in my lifetime, even if the rural area where I live hasn't. So I can see that what he is saying is that is probably the right way to think about it.
And
to disagree with you, disagree with you for a second. So I don't think that this is actually a matter of top-down legislation. This is bottom or middle up. And this is an observation that's been pointed out by Victor Davis Hanson. It's a Jordan Peterson one as well. But it would appear that progressive ideology is extremely good at pumping out middle intelligence bureaucrats that go and latch on to our institutions. And depending on who you want to listen to, neither of those men make this generalization, but the stereotype from like the Baposphere is the middle management female with a sociology degree who is going to go run HR for a tech company. Yeah. And what you have there is the first person that goes through the resumes when you're creating a quote unquote self-selecting system for a corporation. So from government institutions to large corporations, actually bottom up. When I say bottom up, I mean HR departments, the lowest levels of hiring, the internships. When you talk about the extremely liberal 26-year-olds who are doing the quote unquote articles at the New York Times, basically about what people said on Twitter, this is actually bottom up disruption rather than a top down legislation. I'm not saying it's only that, but just to offer the counterpoint that it's not just from the top. I think that theory of middle management infiltration holds a lot of water. Last thought on this. Sorry, a little long-winded first comment.
No, not at all. Thank you for coming in.
So Victor Davis Hanson from the Hoover Institution has an episode recently of his podcast called The Lidless Eye of Progressivism. And the idea there is that being a progressive activist is a full-time job and a full-time identity in a way that for many conservatives, or kind of what I consider the conservative center, many of whom don't consider themselves overtly political, is not a full-time job and occupation. It's not a, it's not like a team sport. People on the opposite side are really into college football versus progressive activism. It's a hobby and a lifestyle that is lidless and works night and day. So there's just one of the frameworks for understanding that the degree to which the low-level foot soldiers of these opposing forces, though they're not clearly delineated, it's asymmetric. There are not committed zealots to the same degree on both sides, because most people on the right side would like to be left alone.
Thank you very much, and I would like to get Brian's thoughts on this as well, because I'm really trying to center in here, trying to find the right target of concern that people are showing today, because it isn't as simple as saying like, oh, we don't want people to have rights, or we don't want people to have freedom. It's more of like, the idea here is like we're afraid of liberalism leading to A, B, and C, because it's going to lead into this slowly, up-and-coming control system that will enslave everyone. That is the big fear, and I don't have an answer here like how to get out of that, or if that's even happening, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure, and I do agree with that that last comment from Bad Ascendant. Was that correct?
Just bad, yeah.
Bad, okay. And because I see a lot of the same thing where, and I see it coming from quote unquote journalists who their lives have not really changed. I mean, they can't go to the market anymore, but they have Grubhub, and they're the ones calling for things that really affect the gears of this country in terms of like raising certain wages, which would put a lot of small businesses out and that sort of thing, but different topic. To your point, I don't really know if I have an answer. I will say this, though, that the more people strive to be X-class, and if anyone's familiar with Paul Fussell's book called Class, I highly recommend it. I think as much I'm not really that worried about this, total lockdown of rights and everything. I think it's scary, and I think we need to keep an eye on it. But I'm not worried about it, because at the end of the day, we are not China. We don't come from a history of being locked down that goes back thousands of years whenever someone had a bad day. So one thing about Americans is that everything they get comes in on trucks. Everything that they eat comes from a ranch or a farm. Without they can't really lock that down too much. So, I also want to say too that as much as people say, the bodybuilding's bad, or that guy's I've been called an assassin because I'm a private investigator. I don't know how they get those confused. And they find out I was in the intelligence field. They're like, how many people did you kill? I'm like, do you know what intelligence is? But the point is, I think they all kind of secretly want it, though. I mean, think about like the campaign trail. Think about Biden saying, oh, I'd kick his ass behind the gym and everything. And everyone's like, yeah, everyone likes to be tough, and I think everyone's kind of striving for that. Just as, people in, I would say the other world, because I don't want to say the other class, because it's a lot of different things. They do. A lot of them are highly intellectual. They just don't wear it on their sleeve. They're amazingly well read. A lot of people I know that, and they just don't wear it on their sleeve. But they do want, a lot of people that I know who shoot guns for sport and cut down trees. They're very, very, very intellectual, but they hunger for more of that academic world, just as I think the academic worlds and these kind of people that you see as woke, I think a lot of these groups are jealous of what the other ones have. And so when I say X-class is that rare class that fits into every world. And I think if everyone can get there, we won't have half the social issues we have, because everyone will understand each other. And that's why I'm always really advocating, like the knife throwing and the remote control cars and all this weird stuff that I put on my feed. I'm always outside. And I think if people would just get outside more and meet people outside of their comfort zone, we wouldn't even have to have this discussion, as enjoyable as it is. So I don't know if I even came close to answering.
Well,
that's
kind of like the grill pill in a way. The idea of people not even having political discussions, but just meeting their fucking neighbors, getting to know them, and having some kind of bonds form over time. And that is something that would withstand something like this.
And I would say really quickly that, like, so I spent many months over in Oxford. When my wife was working on her last book, like we went for like 3-4 months. It was great. I just got to go, and I actually got to go to class and learn about America. But it was really enjoyable. But I can say, and I just was sucking it up. I was just loving it, surrounded by all these ancient texts and having free access to the whole 27 odd colleges. It was great. But I can say almost every academic that I met, even a guy who's like the 4th best mathematician in the world, the first thing he said to me was, "Hey, I do jujitsu."
He must have been watching Joe Rogan episodes back in the day, and that was the gateway.
What I find is every time I talk to them, I would find myself making sure they knew I knew who the author they were talking about was, or the text they were talking about was. And I would notice they would make sure that I knew that they had done something with their hands in the last year. And so I do think everyone's trying to get to that center point.
Do you also think, and this is just real quick, this is a theory that I have about the upper managerial class that I'm not sure, Gio, that you agree with it, but I like throwing it out now and again, which is that I still think that there are people within that whole group that understand that there are certain waves that happen. And right now, the fashion of the time is, in a lot of these industries, to be more woke than not. So in a way, what they're doing is they want to make sure that at least they can contain it and they can hold it. And the way they can, what's the word, when somebody who's not supposed to goes into, subvert it. Like being able to go in there, manage it, maintain it, and make sure it doesn't get too crazy. And I'd wager that there are people out there who are in that situation. When you get them, have a drink with them, they're not going to be, the same kind of, PC talking points like they are at the office. That there would still be a side that they would show where, they understand that this is a situation we're in right now. What the hell are you going to do? Like, the best thing we could do is just try and manage this thing. And I wonder how much of it is that, but whether that's going to be enough, or if there are going to be people who are so scared that whatever next level is going to be, like whatever slippery slope is, wherever that's going to go, that they're not going to resist, and things that we right now find to be completely normal are going to be seen as horrible, fascistic, put in whatever word you want to here. But the point is that, are people going to be brave enough at a certain instance to hold a certain line, or at least manage it so that it doesn't get out of hand within this upper managerial class?
I would say they just need to have a process and stick to it. Like, that's it. Like, have a process and stick to it. Because I think once you say, okay, we're just going to appease Mike or Katie or whomever because they're really offended by this, and it's not, if you have a process set up, there's a great book called The Process Matters. It's almost impossible to get sued. And that's the thing. So if you stick to the process and employees sign, when they come into a company, and I always had this because I worked at major firms like Booz Allen and SAIC, and we had tons of forms we had to sign. And there's a process, and it goes both ways. Like, if you are a misogynist asshole at the office, you will get fired because it says it in paragraph 4E. And I think when people start getting away from the process, that's a slippery slope, because if you break away from your process, you say, well, he didn't really, go counter to the process, but she's very upset or he's very upset, so we're going to fire him. You're going to be firing a lot of people because it never stops. I mean, it's like a snowball. It just gets more and more and more. And so, I think, that's why I'm always investigate everything, record everything, have a process, write it down. If you just stick to and that's why the military, whether you like them or hate them, the military is one of the most efficient machines in the world. Most MBAs base their doctrine off of military doctrine because it works as a process. There's literally a regulation for wiping your face, but there's a process for everything. So I think
disagree on that. So the military is the least efficient machine because it is a large bureaucratic structure in which the lowest common denominator of competence has to be catered to. So they need to make sure that an 18-year-old who barely passed high school doesn't shoot themselves and doesn't blow up their buddies.
Well,
True.
I would say
procedure in the military caters to the not even just the middle of the bell curve, the lower end. It's actually an IQ of 82 below which the military will not take you in. So the problem there,
have you been in the military?
I have not.
Okay. I mean, and that doesn't matter. It's good observation. I do want to say though, I think I think the bureaucracy that manages the military is what you say, but I think it says a lot that you can take that 82 IQ, put that same process, that same SOP in front of them, and they're flying a freaking helicopter in 6 months. I think there's a lot to be said about this. When I say efficient, I'm talking operationally.
Okay, well, but so in the context of the direction that the corporate and professional world's going, for example, like maybe one of the white pills is that as companies turn into decentralized networks of freelancers who operate sheerly on a merit-based, can you deliver and perform work and like get done what needs to be done? You don't even need to be in the physical space. We don't even need to see you. It's how hackers work. It's, can you break this? If you can break it, you got it. You got the job. Doesn't matter when or how. So as companies move in a direction where it's about, can you deliver the work versus are you following procedure? I think that we're actually going to see a downfall of the regimented corporate structure with rules and with that paragraph 7 that told you can't use certain pronouns. Like, I think that the free market is moving away from that kind of superstructure as the way we structure our business world. And I'm not saying, I think the precedent is the military and that's the old model. We're going to move away from that.
Well, but I mean, and I agree with what you're saying, but that's, I'm not talking about like these new things that they're writing in to appease people. I'm talking about the basics. So like, even in the military, you have to deliver, you have to pass and do so many push-ups, for instance, or you can eventually get kicked out of the military. So you do have to deliver, you do have to meet minimum standards. And it doesn't matter if who you are, what gender you are, nothing. It does scare me that I see a movement heading towards the military where they want to bring in a certain wokeness, and that's not going to be good because it is, the best military in history, and it's because there's a standard. You don't make it. My take on.
Well, I notice the people that have like the wokest takes that always say like, I was in the military and this is why I voted for Kamala Harris. They always, let's face it, a lot of them are pogues. But that's.
Oh, by the way, have you seen this?
Don't care who the president is.
Have you seen this article over here? Soldiers.
No, but it just seems the ones that like talk about like the performative aspect of like, oh, I'm in the military, but I agree that we should take away all the guns. By the way, vote for. By the way, AOC stan. It's like, I don't know. A lot of them tend to be pogues, but that's neither here nor there.
What do you think of the high heel situation that happened? And I understand that it was for a good cause as far as like raising awareness for sexual assault, but I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if this is the end or if it gets like certain events like that. If it again goes to the whole slippery slope thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story.
Not.
The Army Times.
I mean, let's just say it's a stand-in for all of the recent progressive reforms to the military, all of which you could consider concerning because they're distracting from any sort of core goal that the military has, because it's just bureaucratic. It's
Can someone tell me exactly what it is, though? Sorry to cut you off. That.
Yeah, go for it, Lev.
Can you just tell me what it is? Was there a protest or? What?
So it was so 15 cadets from Temple University participated in a school-sponsored Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event, during which men stumble through a preset route while sporting high heels as a way to raise awareness for sexual assault victims. So that part is fine with me, like, raising awareness for things like that.
They're not really military. They're not.
Oh, right, yeah, because they're cadets. Yeah.
They're civilians. In the military, there's a strict prohibition against. We have a separate set of laws called the UCMJ,
Well, so the UCMJ just got updated to include you can now wear nail polish. They basically loosened restrictions on nail polish and general like feminine feature enhancements, which I couldn't care less about. But just the direction, like the UCMJ is getting reformed in a direction
that's not good. I mean, that's not good because of the reason why the military has a prohibition on, like, for instance, you can't go and work for a candidate if you're an active duty person. You can't. Because it shouldn't matter who the president is. You have a job, you follow orders. And I don't want to go into the whole historical where that's a bad thing. That can be a bad thing. But what I am saying is, in the most basic of terms, the reason why that is if we have to take that hill, otherwise they're going to put a border up there and blow us all away. If I don't do exactly, just like a football team, if I don't run on the field where I'm supposed to run, the ball's going to fall on the ground. And that's how the military runs. So when we start getting into, I mean, look, I'm not going to comment on the nail polish or anything. Trust me, when they are overseas or in the field, they're probably not going to really give a shit about nail polish. They won't have time, and it's just more shit to carry. But it does sound to me like, and I started seeing this. I got out in 2003 where I started seeing people who had come in post stress cards and stuff like that. And I actually had a soldier report to me and he said, you know, where do we pick up our stress cards? And I just went to the commander because there's special forces, one places you can fire soldiers and send them back to the regular army. And I just said, this person's got to go. They're not going to make it here. So that's it. So. Yeah.
And Alexander, what do you think of the military?
Military, well, I mean, we need it. We need in the military. We need a standing army. You know, people don't understand the reason why the military budget is so high is because we pay our military personnel a lot more than most other countries do. I think that, you know.
You won't offend me.
What?
You won't offend me. You can say anything you want.
No, I'm not trying to. These are my genuine thoughts on the military. Yeah. Like, I think as a culture, I mean, it's you know, it's very boyish. It's very rah, you know, like there's not a lot of Jews in the military. So it's sort of out of my.
It's very goyish.
Experience. What?
Get it? It's very goyish.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my god.
Well, I mean, can I say something, and then I'm not going to keep talking, Alexandra, because you're talking.
But the American military.
Do not research.
On the two things I'll say is that I hear these type of sentiments a lot, and I will say the military is massive. Like there's so many different cultures in the military. You can't really say military culture. Like for instance, do you know that they had a problem on the aircraft carriers where I was getting a tour of one and the lieutenant said, oh, we can't go that way because it was owned by a certain gang. And I'm like, wow. And it's massive. So it's like the difference in culture just between like my military intelligence detachment and the guys from the artillery unit right down the street was like night and day. And so the other thing I'll say too, you mentioned not a lot of Jewish people in the military. No one really, once you're in the military, we had a saying that said, we're all green. And that's what we live by because, and actually I don't know how many
Jewish people are in the military. Like, that was a funny statement, but I would be curious as far as how many Jews are in. And what I do know is that in the USSR, back during World War II, some of the bravest men out there in the field who were the ones who volunteered for the riskiest work, which was basically going into the German territory and, you know, putting up mines and stuff like that, like just going out there where the enemy is, you know, like crawling through the tunnels and all that. The people who volunteered to do that hard shit, they were like, you know, if you'd look at them, they'd look like, you know, skinny, like frail Jewish people. And they were the ones who ended up getting the most fucking medals afterwards because they went out there, risked their fucking lives for their country.
Hey, love, let's change the topic right now, please.
No. But this is a very important thing.
Can I say one thing about that though? Is like I don't think, you know, really race comes into it because like I think it has to do with character on the battlefield. Where
no, I'm not saying that the military is a racist institution. I'm not saying
no. I was responding. I was talking a lot. Yeah.
From growing up in New York City, where I don't have any family members in the military, I don't know anybody in the military, and it's not like a culture that I'm very familiar with. It just seems very much like out there. It's like, okay, you know, they're recruiting generally from like middle America, and you know, I mean, Jordan Peterson said that the military is basically a way for sort of lower class kids to achieve middle class status.
Mm.
You know,
I mean, it just depends what unit you're talking about. Like a lot of people will, I mean, I had Harvard grads in my unit that joined the military to get that loan paid off. So, and especially after 9/11, you saw a real shift away from that. So I don't agree. I love Jordan Peterson. I don't agree with that. But again, I was in a bubble too. I was in military intelligence, where the higher IQ people, based on these ASVAB scores, you can't get into military intelligence. I really quickly, funny story, because to just lighten the topic a little, one of my best friends in the military was this guy named, his last name was Pius. He was Jewish, and he was a rabbi. And he was the only he was the only rabbi in South Korea every time we deployed there. And I'll never forget it. I said, why do you, he was running PT one time, physical training. We'd take turns. And he started playing Prodigy's, a Prodigy song for PT. And he got pulled into the commander's office. And he said, what the hell are you doing? You're going to offend the women in PT, because it was he was playing Smack My Bitch Up, and he said, "Oh, I thought he was saying Smack My Bishop."
Smack the bishop. That's like choking the bishop. And but by the way, one thing that I would add here though is that I don't see it as a racial or a ethnicity thing. What I see it as is there were a lot of Jewish people back in the USSR who were in positions like being clerks, more like nerdy people. And it's interesting that it was the nerdy people, those were the ones who volunteered for the most dangerous jobs, while the hunks were not the ones that, ended up going out there into the shit as much. And I wonder if there is something to that where it's like, and again, I know that the human body is a very important thing to develop, and I am in the presence of a lot of hunky individuals on this stream, and I really appreciate that. But I would say, though, that is it something that may go into a person's head at a certain point where it's like, you work so much on the body that you don't even feel like other things need to be worked on as far as bravery in a dire situation, where a person...
That's somatic narcissism.
It's what?
That's somatic narcissism.
What is somatic narcissism? I'm not too familiar with that.
When you just sort of rely on a fit body to kind of compensate for all your character flaws.
Well, that is an interesting thing. Yes, let's get into it. No, let's get into it. So, Raw Egg Nationalist, is this something that you also see like within the community? And if it is, how can that be fought against? And maybe it isn't. I don't know. Like,
well, it seems to be that's a stereotype of.
Yeah. So that's why I don't want to assume that that's the case. But if it is, like, just let us know what's going down.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe sometimes we do take the post-physique meme a little bit too far, maybe, and where the response to any kind of criticism is post your physique, with the assumption being that the person making the criticism, is flabby. But yeah, I mean, it's of course, narcissism is the stalks all our endeavors. I think the threat of narcissism stalks all our endeavors. As far as physical cultivation goes, it has to be in service of some greater aim, I think. But I mean, it's certainly not something I would encourage. It's certainly not something I've never personally just cultivated physical prowess in any sense, just in its own sake. And that's definitely not something I've ever tried to promote either. But yeah, of course it's something you see, of course.
What are some things?
I mean, I work out for narcissism, because every time a younger guy hits on my really beautiful wife, I go to the gym immediately. Yeah. Every time.
That's not just narcissism. I mean, maybe a little bit. But when it comes to other things like around the countryside, are there things that you personally, Raw Nationalists, like to do to help people around the neighborhood or become more involved in that? Like, because I imagine the countryside, it's easier to do than like living in the city where everybody's so isolated from each other. I just don't know, like right now with COVID, if that's kind of precipitated more of an isolation, or if there's still a chance to like go out there and help people out.
I help my elderly neighbours from time to time. Yeah, for sure. I do nice little things for my elderly neighbours. But at the moment, it's quite difficult. It's very difficult to know. I mean, I live in an area that's mostly old people, and it's quite difficult to know really how to help them, because obviously you don't want to expose them to the risk of catching the virus. I mean, I personally don't care about my own risk of catching it, because I couldn't be in a less.
Well, there was a situation with a friend of ours in Russia he was not as young as you are. I mean, I don't know how old you are. Would you be able to tell us how old you are, or you want to keep that on the DL?
I'll let you guess.
Let's see. 30.
You're reasonably warm. Yeah.
It's Quentin. Warm. It's Quentin from the book club. All right, we got it.
Oh my God.
Well, Brian, how old are you?
I am 46.
Wow.
Oh, I thought you were 36.
Yeah, looking good.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
I am sending you some sort of gift. Something well earned.
And how do you keep yourself so young looking? Like, what is your diet like? Because we were talking about diet in the beginning of the episode.
Honestly, my diet sucks. I mean, I just bought some chicken fingers at a gas station because I forgot to eat breakfast. And I rarely work out. But honestly, I feel like I look younger and healthier now that I've left the 9-to-5 job and I'm an entrepreneur. And I just don't look. I'm in a great relationship. We don't go to sleep angry ever.
That's great.
And I don't have a lot of stress in my life. And I just, I think I've seen just the horrible things that people do to each other, whether that's overseas or here in America. And it's just, life's too short. So I've never been one to complain on a plane when we're going to be late, because there's nothing I can do about it. So what I think the only secret I can say is, healthy relationship with my kids and my family, and going outside as much as I can, and just trying to be mindful. And I could be a rageaholic according to my wife, but not like a physical rageaholic. But she's really helped me, say, okay, go find some mindful practice, and you have to do that. I mean, and it doesn't have to be sitting Indian style and listening to your breathing. I get so bored doing that, so I'll go outside.
Not me, but anyway.
I
do the Wim Hof method, where I get like psychedelic visions when I breathe. So that's like a whole different.
Yeah. I mean, I need to figure out how to.
I will teach you. I will do some classes.
Please do. But I would say the biggest thing is for me is I would say having hobbies, and when I'm with my 9-year-old or with my daughter, who's in her 20s, I shut off my phone. I'm not doing work. If the work's not done by Saturday, guess what? It's not going to be done. It doesn't need to be done by Saturday night. I don't care what's on Twitter. I'm with them now. And, I think human contact is a big thing. That's why I'm so against lockdowns. I think it's great that you're in an elderly neighborhood, but you're out there talking to people. And trust me, that's all you need to do to help them, is they just want to be talked to.
Definitely.
And, even if it's from distance. So I would say human contact, sunlight, or fog light.
But also all the work that you put in
Fogly,
when you were in the military, though, do you think all the ringers you had to go through back then end up supporting you now? Like all the physical exertion that you had to do, it's kind of it's paying off dividends in the older age.
I mean, I would say that, but I'd also say even growing up, when I was in high school, I had 6 brothers, and they would beat the shit out of me until I got to a certain age, and I had to weightlift just to survive. And
wow.
So I had the Weeder books, and I had the shakes, and I had all the I watched the old Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, which I love. As Pumping Iron, and I think and the Bodybuilders.
I feel like I'm coming every time when I lift weights. I'm coming.
Yes, he's so.
I love that line.
So funny.
Go home and I'm coming.
I mean, I think the bodybuilders could speak to this more, but
coming.
I would imagine that, your bone structure is, if you're weightlifting at the appropriate age, as young as you can, but not too young, but your bone structure, I think, is going to naturally get to to a point where it can support muscles. And I do know when I do hit the gym, it comes back really fast. So and then with the military as well, I think, yeah, I mean, the military, you're always working out, like always. You're in the gym, you do physical training every morning at 7. You're running at least 4 miles a day, even when you get to your regular unit. But I think the biggest thing too is you're moving, you're constantly, you're getting things done. It's like we have a lot to do, and that. So for me, and I do find too, I go through spouts when I want to lay on the couch and watch Cobra Kai for like 18 episodes.
I heard that was a good show.
Horrible.
Like first season's
Such a good show. It's such a good show. Talk about a show that really shows the harmony that can happen when classes learn about each other. I think that's what it's all about, but that's another topic. But so my secret, I don't know. I mean, happiness, stress-free life, and find that mindful practice that does it for you. My right now, it's remote control cars. Traxxas cars are freaking awesome, and I even call it. And Traxxas, the company that makes these cars, I talked to them. They said their sales have gone through the roof since the pandemic, and their demographic is like upper middle class lawyers.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's probably a
that
lot
tells you
more time
something.
to spend with the kids now at home, and this may be like a start of, like, as a white pill for all the people who are listening, what's happening with COVID right now may result, plus with Elon Musk's new space internet. So he has this thing called Starlink, where it
cool.
gets really good reception. Like, it gets like
Awesome.
like in the 30s, 40s, 50s even, upload and download. So maybe even more. So imagine people living in more of a rural area, growing their own food, taking care of their kids, and doing work on the internet as well on the side, making money that way as well, but still living in such a lifestyle that maybe this could revolutionize everything. Because we used
I
to
think
not,
so.
we didn't used to have these office jobs, having to go somewhere, commute, traffic, pollution, and then, or factory jobs. Like, it's all bullshit at the end of the day. Why not
That
live
was
on
all
your...
a conscious. I know I'm getting like Adam Curtis documentary vibe, but like that was a conscious effort of social planning in order to like make people more accustomed to city life being a conglomeration of different peoples that don't have a sort of a rootedness to them. But that was in some ways, but now we're seeing how that model was efficient for maybe like not even 30 years ago, but now that model is sort of becoming not as efficient to have people drive ungodly hours to get to an office stacked yay high with so many people. But Alexandra, how old are you, by the way, if you mind? Because you're getting quite a bit of bit of marriage proposals in the chat. So
Gio, you don't ask that too. Well, I mean, oh man, what have you done?
Every time a Feminon comes on the stream, it's just what happens. So,
how old am I? God, well, what should I say? I'm 31.
Okay, now we're getting in the chat other feedback. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Just continue.
Well, also
on.
they were curious about your tattoo. Can you explain what your tattoos are?
Okay, well, they're not super meaningful, honestly. Like, they're just fun little designs.
Is that a
vampire bat? I got a black widow.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like sort of the kind of animals I like. It's got a moon. This little sort of Durga figure, like sort of.
Ooh,
I have a
Whoa.
butterfly. Yeah, it's all American traditional.
Nice.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
That's some good ink.
Thank you. And I have this beautiful snake.
Wow.
I can't really see it.
See, this is so much better than the stupid tattoos of
I think
what's her name?
Jealous. You got that big bat up on your shoulder. Now you're the Batwoman.
The flowers
Exactly.
remind me of one of those Autobahn illustrations. I think he did some flowers. Autobahn,
Wait,
right?
who is the vice president today? Kamala Harris, that's it. Or Kamala.
Yeah.
So Kamala Harris's daughter, she has these dopey-looking millennial
Adopted
tattoos.
daughter.
Adopted daughter.
Aaron,
these...
oh yeah,
what's your
I
name?
went to school with the brother. I know.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually
Tell us
remember
about that.
her brother went to my college and was an incredibly normal, like, wealthy Jewish kid at a liberal arts school, and now his dad is the husband of Kamala, who is childless. So yeah, Kamala's literally his stepmom, and that's his
Wow.
sister.
And now she's on the cover of is it Vogue magazine? I was seeing today people were mogging this photo set she did. She's the top model under 30 now.
It's just funny because like she's like a Jewish New York art school girl and could not look more the type for that.
Yeah.
Like, the archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's kind of like a Katamari Damashi type design, if you're familiar with that game.
Yeah, that's true.
And by the way,
art school in New York, girl, what?
And by the way, Alexandra, what is your day like? Like, I just want to go over, like, before we end the show, finishing with Raw Egg Nationalist, because he's a guest of honor.
Well, we didn't talk about aesthetics yet. We have to talk about...
Oh, yes, we will. Yeah. Okay, but before that, what is your routine like as far as, like, the kind of things you enjoy eating, things of that nature? Because this is also about diet and stuff like that, and, you know, food stuff.
My day isn't particularly regimented right now. I'm not currently employed. I do commissions online. If anybody wants to hit me up on Twitter, I would very much appreciate any business.
What kind of work?
Any traditional. Yeah.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm an artist. I do.
This is your Twitter, right? Poor Caroso flies again.
Yeah. I'm just sort of starting out as sort of a self-employed person.
Where can we see your art? Is it online anywhere?
Sorry, I'm so shy. I'm on Instagram.
I'll give you a follow.
Yeah, opium_lettuce. I'm so sorry. I might change the name. I'm sorry.
Hey, a professor came out from Harvard that he's microdosing heroin. So.
Wow!
If you saw that, yeah.
Well, Gio, you're not the biggest opponent of opium. You remember you like the opium dens?
Oh, real opium, not a fentanyl. That's.
Well, opium lettuce is a real plant, and it was used in traditional medicine as an anesthetic. And it's just a name I kind of picked at random because I think it's memorable. But I'm then on Instagram, but also just go on my Twitter and you can hit me up there. And I'll post a link and everything. I need to get a bit more organized. So I need to launch my website. That's in the works. So yeah, if I'm not doing that, I'm generally like, I exercise, eat 3 times a day, run errands, like normal shit. I moved recently, so I'm still setting my room up. Yeah,
wait, opium lettuce doesn't have any posts in it right now, right? Am I looking at the right account?
No, I saw that.
Yeah, it's
opium dash
underscore. You did a digital portrait of Hannah Kimura. Wow, are you into Joshi wrestling at all?
Well, I just heard her story and I thought it was tragic, and she's so beautiful, and I just wanted to honor her. Yeah, and I need to post a lot more. I'm sorry, it's been a bit bare bones lately. I just been
here is the Hannah Kimura one. Oh man, see, I got to do a screen cap for this. Instagram is so inhospitable when it comes to sharing content on other sites.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand why they do it. Somebody has to go up to Zuckerberg and, tell them this is not right. But anyway, here it is. Here is the Kimura. Check this out. Beautiful.
Thank you. Oh.
Look at that. That is wonderful
really good
work.
Really good work.
Thank you.
And when it comes to next, we have Remus. What is your lifestyle like as far as a lot of these food-related things, working out?
I'm in a city, and with COVID, it's been a little bit more difficult to do basically everything that you would need to do in an urban environment to sort of keep the healthiness up. I'm trying to get out as much as I possibly can, go for as many walks as I possibly can. I'm tending to eat. I'm trying to keep the diet kind of balanced with meats and poultries, and a good balance of just your average like greens and potatoes. Things like that. Nothing special. I don't really go for these extreme diets. But I am trying to, as much as I can, keep up with just getting myself out, because the whole isolating yourself inside, constantly being in central air, that kind of thing, it's not good for you. You know what I mean? And you know, when everything opens up, I know I'm going to get back into doing some form of martial art. It's been a while since I moved to the States. It's been more difficult to find that kind of thing.
Where do you live?
But I think martial arts. I live in the Northeast. I live in New England.
Okay.
So there are places and there are things, but I'm rather particular. I'm not going to just walk into any gym. I need to know that the guy is legit type thing. I'm not gonna gym bust, but it's gonna be like, I'm not gonna be like, you know, doing dojo, kicking over dojos and breaking their sign outside.
Like the dojo wars
like,
in the 70s.
Yeah. I'm not Ryu, but you know, I do want to. I do want to know that the person that I'm learning from is legit. So, depending on you know the thing that you choose. Oh god, she does look like a Katamari. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I heard someone describe it. Hey, Arnold Schick. That's a really great one.
Hey, Arnold Schick.
Hey, Arnold.
Okay, so she's clearly, her whole vibe is like she's androgynous and, you know, not sort of, she's usually like pretty. She's not like meant to be like a glamour model.
She looks like Michael Cera.
Yeah,
She's
I mean,
just
whatever.
trying to be
Like,
Michael Cera awkward.
Napoleon
I'm not
Dynamite.
calling her. It's the style. It's the aesthetic.
It's an
It's not that she actually
offshoot.
looks like
It's
him.
a very poor offshoot of '90s heroin chick, but it's not
exactly.
Kate Moss.
yeah, she's kind of close. Siobhan, how do you pronounce her? Chloe, whatever, like that, who's in Kids or whatever, like that sort of thing.
Oh, Chloe Sevigny.
Yeah,
Sevigny.
Oh, Chloe Sevigny.
I could never focus on her. Thank you.
I loved her in Boys Don't Cry, by the way. That was a great film. Even though I know it's very hard for, you know, as a trad cath to admit it, but it's a good.
But myself is asking.
Hard movie to watch.
Yeah.
Very
So
incredibly
hard. I
hard
watched
movie.
that when I was 13 years old.
Oh
and
man.
No.
I
no,
watched
Chloe
Clockwork
Sevigny-
Orange when I was 7 years old. So there we go. I got everybody beat.
She was great in Brown Bunny, which everyone thinks is terrible. But Vincent Gallo was another based in Red Pilled film art.
Well, that was the movie that had the blowjob scene in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And by the way-
I actually met
yeah.
her. I met her. I used to work at a movie theater. I met her. She's actually really cool. Very down to earth person. Very nice.
Yeah, I can see that.
You wouldn't expect. Well, if you know where she's from, you wouldn't consider it if you're from around here. But she was actually very normal, which was cool compared to some of the more important people that I've met. She was rather cool. But I did want to say this just briefly before while I have the mic a little bit. I did want to say the sort of, we were talking about masculinity and how to get good outlets out and sort of mindful practice and all of that stuff. And I one of the things that I try to push on Twitter, though I am locked right now because Jack fears me. I do try to tell people martial arts is an excellent outlet for a lot of especially young men, because you guys can quote unquote hurt people without actually hurting people. Like you can get that out, you can get that impulse out, the impulse of sometimes you just want to punch somebody, but you can't just do that. You can't do that. That's not okay. It's not nice.
That's living in authentic. That's bad faith existence right there.
Exactly. You can't do that kind of thing. So it's a good way to get it out, and not just that, get it out in an environment where, one, it's healthy, two, all of the people are encouraging you to try to get better, and three, you're in a like-minded environment. This is comradeship. You're all sort of suffering together in the extremely difficult workouts, the hurt, the pain, all of that. It comes together to some people kind of are weird and sociopathic and they just like hurting people, but those people kind of get weeded out pretty quickly. And you'll very quickly find powerful camaraderie in the people that you're learning from, whether it's, this doesn't matter whether it's boxing, whether it's judo, whether it's jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter what it is.
And I used to take jiu-jitsu too, by the way, and we did this ceremony at the end where everybody would shake each other's hand. So I definitely get what you're talking about.
Did you ever watch that documentary? What was it called? Fighting in the Age of Loneliness. You know that one?
Yeah, that's excellent. It's a beautiful.
I mean, the guy's a bit of a lib, but like it's
but that's okay. That's okay. I don't care if people have different politics. I think the thing about like mixed martial arts being a way of temporarily breaking from the mundane. Dude, it's
the mundane like sort of inauthenticity of like hyper-capitalist modernity. Yeah.
Exactly. Think about how, even though it's prize fighting, right? Think about how crazy it is that you can get in a cage and fight a guy in a way that's like, it's super real, dog. Like, this is not
primal.
Like, if you get cut open, the fight's not over. If you get rocked, the fight's not over. The fight is over when the ref says that the fight is over. The fight is. You may have gotten 3 concussions by the time he gets to you. Like, it's actually dangerous. It's not just,
especially if you have that one ref. What's his name?
Yeah, Herb Dean. Herb, where's my money,
Bell.
Cecil Peoples.
Mario Yamasaki. There's a whole bunch of MMA guys that are known for like allowing fights to go way long.
For people seeking that out, so I have an undefeated amateur MMA record. I've also had a pretty privileged life. I have no reason that I should be interested in fighting. I have great parents, no violence. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I've basically sought that out because it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like
you like it, son. Because you like it.
When you don't think about it as like, I need a masculine output, I'm gonna go get into martial arts. It's like kind of like masculinity is like it's like what they say. It's like pornography. Can't explain it, but I know it when I see it. And it's like
exactly.
You go do jiu-jitsu, or you go you can go train hard at a CrossFit gym, be in any hard training environment. You find like-minded people, and to the extent that you can escape the bugman existence. Like my first fight, I got a message on Facebook on a Wednesday that said, "Hey, we had a dropout. Can you make 170 for Saturday night?" And I remember looking at the screen on Facebook. I was working on copywriting and being like, well, I weighed 178 pounds this morning. The hardest part about this will just be saying yes and pressing enter. And I'm going to be fighting on Saturday, and I actually don't have time to freak out about it. And that was, I was 21 years old, and like that was how I could seek out feeling alive and like I was earning something that was my own, and testing myself against a stranger who came out with his entire community. And a far and away greatest night of my life. And I've made a lot more money on other days, and done more meaningful things by society standards elsewhere. But fighting in a community center on short notice, greatest experience of my life.
Yeah. And Thad, do you know of this gym, by the way? This is the one that I used to go to, and I highly recommend it, Ronin Athletics.
No, man, I don't fucking like New York City.
By the way, the referee was Steve Mazzagatti. Now, if you have Mazzagatti, then you might as well he probably will let you turn into a real death match. Like, you could probably bring in a folding chair and some thumbtacks and that.
Mazzagatti was the guy that had probably the worst stoppage I've ever seen, where the guy literally gets knocked out 3 times before the fight. Before the fight ends. I will say this: the comment that I would make on what that just said is, I think the reason that's the greatest night of your life, man, it's because you got the opportunity for one of the few times that many of us will ever get. You got the opportunity to be a savage, son. You got the opportunity to just go, fuck it, let's go. I don't care. I'm just gonna do this crazy thing that's very reckless. I probably shouldn't be doing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And it gives me the opportunity to attain something that isn't normal in mundane life. You are it's Bappian in a way. You're coming close to the gods, man. You're climbing the mountain. You're going to a place where you probably shouldn't go, and doing a thing that you probably shouldn't do.
You should victorious.
And you are victorious, and you come out victorious. Even if you lose, it doesn't matter. You face your fear, right?
I think that's the biggest thing. I'm not going to cut you off for too long, but I totally that's what I've been. We did mixed martial arts in my last 2 years in the military, which was great. They're like, "Who wants to volunteer to do that?" Yeah, and what I loved about it was not only that it's savage, but it's a thinking man's sport. Like, people don't realize when these guys are on the mat, it's not just brutal. There's breathing, there's energy levels, there's you're punching them in the face to get them to put their hand up so you can put them into an armbar. And what I love about it is, and I'll give you the mic right back, but one thing I like about it is, I haven't been in a street fight probably in 4 or 5 years, but I like walking down the street, and that great unknown does not exist for me. Like, win or lose, I know that I could defend the people I'm with pretty well. I might lose, but I'm very confident in all aspects of that. Yeah.
The cerebral aspect, I mean, especially nowadays with like a modern fighter has to memorize so many different move sets, so many different combinations
you have
and
to
counter
you have to
holds.
be
Yeah.
you have to be proficient in like
Yeah.
6 different extremely different disciplines. Like it's,
Even like in,
jiu-jitsu
even like
is
in,
not wrestling, is not boxing, is not kickboxing, is
No.
not Muay Thai, is not. But they all, you have to synthesize all of that. And the thing is that if you don't, somebody's gonna kick you in the face. Like it's not like if you don't do it, you
But that's
you
but
don't
in
get
some ways,
hired or you fail at your job. It's somebody is gonna beat you up if you
but
don't
then
do
again,
it.
like the counterpoint, like to play devil's advocate would be at the end of that documentary, the black pill was that even the UFC, even mixed martial arts becomes another feature of the
Yes.
culture industry and commodity
Yes,
capitalism.
which is
now
why
it becomes a pantomime of masculinity. It becomes wearing the fucking tap out shirt and going on Reddit and
just
talking
bleed,
about the fight
just-
stats
exactly.
instead of actually going to a
RMMA.
gym and doing it.
Exactly. It becomes armchair MMA analysts
It's
instead
like-
of people who have
yeah,
actually
it's like-
done the thing. People who have never been punched in the face are making
Well,
fun
it's
of Conor
the
McGregor.
equivalent in
Are you
wrestling.
kidding me?
In my
Are you
world,
kidding?
the equivalent, like being a pro wrestling fan, would be like being a smart mark, thinking that, oh well, they're gonna push Kota Ibushi this year. Don't worry about. It's like, you know what I mean. It's the same. It's like being a smart mark, but with MMA.
Yeah, it's
the Reddit of
literally
it.
yeah. It's being a Redditor. It's turning it into a Reddit thing. It's like,
But
bro,
I mean,
no.
I think that's okay to have the fanboys out there. I mean, I
Yeah.
ran
Yes, but
because you
don't
need
want to.
that, you know. You
But
need
okay,
that.
but this is what I would say. This is, and I'll end here. This is what I would say is the fear. Okay, is the problem is you know how karate is now, where karate is almost like a meme. Karate's like we all know what a McDojo is. Everybody understands what that means. Everybody understands. There's some guy who can't really do the thing that he's black belt claiming that he can do, is teaching people. And this is what happens when you don't gatekeep properly, when the thing doesn't become real anymore, right? Is that you get MMA gyms run by clowns who are just allowing brain damage to happen to young people. That's all they're doing, right? So you need people who are legit. That's what I'm talking about.
Definitely.
Legit practitioners, people who understand what they're doing, people who actually care about the discipline, what it means, what it's about, why you learn. You don't learn to beat people up. You learn to defend yourself. You learn to banish fear. So that is exactly what you said. When you walk down the street, we all know, anybody who's fought knows it's a dice roll, son. You could go lights out by accident. You don't even know what happened, right? They could punch you. They could knock you out on a punch they didn't even throw on purpose, right? It just happens. But you know that you don't have to be afraid. You understand what it is when these things come together. When the violence happens, you know what to do. You're more competent. You're more confident, and therefore, that is what masculinity is about. It's about being prepared for the worst, but not acting like a fucking asshole all the time. Not being a piece of shit and hurting people around you, but being prepared, if necessary, to do what needs to be done. And in a situation of violence, right? I don't want to hurt people, yo. But if you're gonna hurt my family, I'm gonna snap your every limb on your body, and that's the end of the conversation. I'm not even asking you. It's
well, as a certain Italian philosopher said, neither pleasure nor pain should factor into doing what needs to be done. So
exactly, it's about understanding how this works and what needs to be done as a result, right? And the confidence that comes with that. That's the only reason that I would recommend this particular discipline to young men, is because it's constructive and it teaches you what you need to learn.
And when you guys who have trained and fought, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I will never forget the first time I walked down the street and I started seeing circles and angles as I walked by people that looked, I'm seeing 5 different moves, like if he does this. And it's just this really cool, it's kind of like when Rain Man comes down, or like the Rain Man. It's like you're playing it out in slow motion.
That's exactly what it feels like. All of a sudden you can measure people completely differently.
Exactly.
They're no longer a person walking down the street. They're a bundle of physical mechanics that you understand better. You know how like, oh, that guy's got nothing. He's got a limp. He doesn't even know how to walk properly. Like he doesn't control his weight in a way that's efficient. He doesn't actually know how. This is the difference between people who don't know how to fight and people who do. They have the eye, right? You can if you like, I love to do this. I would go to a bar with my friends to watch MMA, and we would just listen to the people around, right, and the things that they would say, and it's so revealing the way people's like you're such a moron. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about at all. And you're speaking with such like you're so confident. You're talking to like all these people around you, dude. I'm telling you, if he just did, I'm sitting there like, this guy doesn't even understand the minds. He doesn't even understand the brain aspect of this. Never mind the body. Like, if you don't understand how frightening it is to do, like when people were confused as to why Connor looked scared when he got cracked the first time by Dustin Poirier not too long ago, okay? Because Conor McGregor understands in that moment, in the moment where the knuckles are hitting him in the jaw, all of a sudden, all of the shit that he talked, everything that he's done up to this point, all of the fucking watches and the boats and the whiskey and the shoes and the suits and all of that flashed in front of his eyes, and he realized this kid that is kicking my ass right now, he never got out of the gym, he never stopped, and I have been talking all this game. I'm on top of the world. I have nothing but to lose. Like, I will lose so much in this moment, and no one has ever seen me get knocked out in this cage before. I've never had those. There's never been clips of me huddled on the ground standing underneath a guy who just knocked me out before. That's never happened. And all of a sudden, those things are all real. His worst nightmare is becoming reality, and the worst part is because he's Rock, there's nothing he can do about it. Of course, he looked afraid. So to hear people, I get it. It's banter. They're making fun of the guy. But that kind of talk is constant in these situations. And I know full well that these are the type of people that if you slap them too hard, they'll cry.
Yeah, well, it's classic,
you know what I mean?
all bark, no bite. Like we used to say in first group, we used to say, because we'd have people in the military that I call them the I'm gonnas. Like, I'm going to go to Ranger School. I'm going to go to Airborne School. And
exactly.
They never go, but we used to say, the soldier that beats his chest the loudest has the least to say.
Exactly. And the person who's the quietest is the one that you should be the most worried about, because he's studying you. He is watching you.
Mm-hmm.
He knows
all the shot callers in the pen were always the smallest, quietest guys, right?
Exactly, man. So it teaches you to be humble. It teaches you to understand your target. It teaches you to know your enemy. It teaches you who you are as a person.
Country way.
You find out if you're a coward or not. And if you're a coward, bro, it's okay. Most men are cowards. It's okay to want to run. It's okay to not want to get hit in the face. It takes a certain type of guy to get punched in the face and go, "Yes, man, I have another." That's weird. Okay, that's not normal.
Please,
like
sir, may I have one more?
Seriously, that's like pit bull
anyway,
genetics. It's a different thing.
We haven't.
But,
yeah, we got to go to the aesthetics. We got to go to the aesthetics.
No, but also other panelists.
Yes.
We haven't heard from Raw Egg and Alexandra.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I will.
I know.
Remus, I will end
you have a
here.
tendency to get lost.
Well, we also haven't heard from Morgan as well. Morgan's been quiet as a saint this whole time, so I want to go to Morgan. Can you also tell us in brief about your system throughout the day, like what you, how you prefer to read and work out and stuff like that? Morgan, are you there?
I mean,
yeah,
excellent. It's been tough for me because at the beginning of November, I fractured my collarbone right by the acromion joint. So training's been out for a while. But whenever I started to be able to actually do stuff again, it was a lot of like body weight and like lightweight work stuff. But a lot of the training recently has just been a lot of like overlooked aspects, which I think, Raw Egg, if you could even like look into this yourself, or not look into it for yourself necessarily, but as something to talk about, is these overlooked aspects of training, like rotational strength, anti-flexion strength, like these aspects of like the core and the trunk that like we talk about a lot, like in sports science and things like that, but aren't talked about in like a sort of meaningful way in fitness. These are foundational to transitory strength that takes on a whole different meaning, like pushing on, like doing isolateral pushing on a standing plane from a cable hits everything so much differently than say like a lying bench press or a dumbbell press or whatever. But as far as like and stuff goes, I'm not a very hard to figure out man. I do some type of, it's different now that it's Lent, but I do some type of meat, sauteed spinach, onions, tomatoes, and garlic. That's pretty much my day in, day out. And then I have started doing the egg shakes as well. But like it's honestly, my rule of thumb goes, if it's made of real food, I'll eat it. Like if I'm gonna have like, you know, for example, for Fat Tuesday, I had homemade blueberry cobbler with Edie's ice cream. And the reason I chose Edie's is because it's, you know, I took a look at the ingredients label. It's like cream, milk, eggs, you know.
I thought it was Eddie's, but go on.
I don't know. I just kind of go with whatever. But, you know, if it's made out of real food and I don't need to whip out my organic chemistry knowledge to read the label and guess what it's made of, then it's like, I consider it pretty safe for eating, and I have no problem like going on with it in that regard. But, you know, like to talk about like some of the aspects of strength that people overlook with, you know, all of this other stuff, I think it is important because it's what separates out like, you know, the strength that everybody trains for in the gym versus strength that puts bodily longevity, or you know, like
something like yoga.
I had to learn the hard way was just like being
Yoga's
something
awesome.
like yoga, but even stuff like isolateral like hoisting, like picking up a kettlebell with one hand and pressing it overhead, or holding something overhead and walking with it, doing like a suitcase carry, like all of these ways that you can train your body to stabilize under that. And then body weight motion itself, like one of the things that we see a lot of is like, you got these guys who are like 35, 40, 45 that can't even like, you know, get like squat down onto the, like down to their ankles. And it's like, you know, it's a big fear of mine, like to, you know, one day wake up of my own volition and not have the capability, if I need to like get on my knees to go under my car without blowing a gasket in my own head.
Well, is there an exercise to test for longevity where you sit cross-legged and then you get up without using your arms? Like, would that be a good measure?
Yeah, I've heard that one before. Or another one is Hindu squats. Like, if you can squat down onto the balls of your feet and really like get up from that position, it tests the strength of the patellar tendons in the knee. And a lot of people, like a lot of the injuries we've seen recently has been people with bad patellar tendons not being able to perform up to the weights that they're handling. And we've just seen people's knees completely explode because of this. So it's
now
weird,
when
like,
you're doing the Hindu squat, by the way, do you have to make sure that the knees don't go over the legs when you're going down?
No, that's the whole point. You want your knees to go over your toes.
Okay.
You want the
You can't
fulcrum
avoid it.
of that movement.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I mean,
you want the fulcrum of that movement to be on the knee. But that's why it's body weight only. You never load up on a Hindu squat.
Yeah.
So
how many would be considered a good kind of test of one's, I don't know, like how many would you say it's worth to?
I would say just for pure mobility, like just to set up a baseline for yourself, see if you can do 10. You know,
yeah, well,
if you can do 10 consistently, like you're on a, if you're serious about pursuing fitness, 10 is a good baseline to say like, okay, well, I can at least move my body in this plane of motion. So I don't have to limit myself because of my knees in this way necessarily. And then you can build off of that from there.
Excellent. Now, as far as go on.
I was about to say, there's a whole lot of other things that you could like work this out with, like, you know, doing overhead press training instead of flat bench training or stuff like that. Like, there's a whole lot of different ways that we really stopped looking at training that is really detrimental to our performance in life in a bunch of different ways. But, you know, what were you going to ask?
I was going to ask, as far as these kind of exercises go, I know that Geo, you've been working on the bands recently, and I'm really happy that you started on that road. And I don't know, like how much you would, I don't know how much you would want to talk about that aspect of it, like getting better in fitness and improving.
Yeah, it's like it's difficult at my position to when you get started, but no, I guess that would probably be a good people that aren't used to like working out or physical fitness. Like, what is the best what is the best way to sort of acclimatize yourself, especially at like the put it this way, the larger end of the BMI
Walking.
spectrum.
Walking,
It's-
full stop. Like
It's better.
it's
It's better
so-
to listen to a
so
new
important to
person.
help.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good. It's important because walking is something that we don't do hardly at all anymore. And it's like I learned this the hard way because in my years of training, prior to my injury, I had been training for about 10 years. And I never did cardio. I hated doing cardio. I hate running. It's not my cup of tea. But I did find that if I just pursued walking instead, then I actually had an enjoyable form of cardio that wasn't like, it was demanding, but not like exhaustively demanding. But, you know, I would do these uphill walks that would be, you know, it would put stress on my calves, it would put stress on my heart. And it was a great way for me to burn off the extra calories, to condition my heart for something a little bit more intensive rather than just sets of 8 reps and stuff like that. So, you know, Ramus, go ahead with what you were going to say, because I'm curious as to what you had to throw on.
and
I've
also,
got to go. I've got to go. Sorry, lads.
Well,
Oh,
Raw
ladies.
Nationalist, before you go, I just wanted to, number one, promote your magazine
Thank
once
you.
again. So, guys,
Thank you.
please go to Raw Nationalist Twitter right now. I am loading it up, and it was just an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I
Likewise.
wish you the very best for the future of this magazine. And I hope that
Thank
it
you.
keeps on growing,
Great
and we get to
conversation,
have more of these amazing conversations.
Thank
so
you.
here's the magazine over here. And one more question. What would you leave people with who are aspiring to get into fitness, to get into even drinking like these raw egg things? Like, do you start from 7? I mean, I had 7 eggs today with the raw half and
good.
half and the well, I'm not gonna get into the whole thing right now, but what would be your recommendation to people who want to, kind of like Geo, like start getting into a lot of these different things? Walking is definitely one. Would you recommend anything else for people to get started?
I think it's important to be patient. That's what I would say. Is just stick with it. Like you're not going to see results in one day or 1 week, but you'll start to see results in a month, and you'll definitely see results in a year if you stick with it. So start small, make small changes to your life, and build incrementally.
And before you go, one other thing that I'm going to do after you leave is I am going to, and I did this before on the stream, do some calf raises. And I'm curious, how many calf raises do you think I can do? As a bet. I mean, I want to put money on this, and I'm not
What was
sure
the
if
last
people.
time 200? Was that the
Yeah, it
last?
was
last
200. No, 500. I think it was 5.
The last
it
time
five?
was 500.
Yeah,
Oh,
500.
God.
The first
So
time it
let's
was
see.
400. The second time it was 500.
So let's see if I can up the ante this time. How many do you think I can do?
500.
500?
I'm
Okay,
gonna say
let's see.
501.
500. Oh man, nobody says 666. Okay, fine. I'm gonna do 500
It's a
then.
good Christian stream.
777. Do that. 777.
Yes.
Lev, I have to go as well.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming in. I really
Hey,
appreciate
great
it.
conversation. I followed everyone.
Absolutely.
Please follow me back. I want to talk to more of you. And by the way, if once I figure out who you are, and background check you, certainly,
Oh, man.
certainly would love to get. I was talking to
Well,
Lev about this.
I
Get
think
some people up
someone-
here to the country.
Someone did call you a glow in the dark in the chat. So
What is a glow in the dark?
Oh no,
Oh,
Gio,
no!
you've opened the
No!
Pandora's box.
We'll
You're
explain
a
that
fed.
on
You're
Twitter.
a fed.
I'm not a Fed. No, private
That's what a Fed would say.
investigator. Private. I was a
That's what
Fed.
a Fed would say.
Oh God, I always get that. That
people
you were
just
trained
become
to.
not
You were
feds
trained to say
anymore.
that.
That's how it works.
Yeah, no, not a Fed. Definitely not a Fed. I'd have worse shoes if I was a Fed. But anyways, yeah. So thank you, everyone. And Lev, I just wanted to really say, we were talking about personal liberties earlier. I just want to promote what my wife does, and I do some of this with her, but she's really out front in breaking down these bills as they're going through her site, dailyclout.io. And this great YouTube channel on there. If you want to find out what's going through, like they're promoting all these things that are just great, and she's really good at just dissecting them and saying, yeah, but did you know this? And did you know this? And this is going to cost this much. So I highly recommend it.
Well, this is Daily Clout right now, the site. Where do I go specifically for your wife's work so people can take a look at it?
If you look at, I sent you a message further down, there's a YouTube link there. Or you could go to dailyclout.io and just click on the YouTube, the button, what do you call it? Button, whatever. And then...
Let's see. I'm looking right now, so you sent me a link in the message here. Oh, here we go. I see the YouTube. Yes. Perfect. So these, so can you say a little bit about these videos? What are these videos on this channel over here then?
So for instance, like if, let's say a bill is going through to ban, public gatherings, she really breaks that down into, well, this is driven by this, and this is happening here. This is what you need to be aware of. Or there's a great bill on, let's say, climate change, and everyone's really happy about that. But then all of a sudden you read the fine print, and it says, yeah, but only these people can get these contracts, and we're going to redirect all of your taxpayer money to this. And she really is just really good at pulling these apart piece by piece and talking you through them. And she has a lot of great guests from every walk of life. I'm sure she'd love to talk to a lot of the people on this channel.
That would be amazing. Breaking down the walls. This is perfect.
Yeah, I've told her all about you guys. So, please, if you would, check it out. You may agree or disagree, but it's a transpartisan site. So beautiful. She's not taking a side. She's being very objective. So hopefully you'll check that out. And I already sent the link to my YouTube, which is me throwing things, playing with remote control cars, and chasing bears out of my backyard. So,
and I am going to promote that as well. Let me just see if I could find that. I see the iCloud stuff over here. Where is your YouTube? Because I'm not seeing that.
YouTube is here. I don't have like a cool.
And guys, while this gap of time is happening, don't forget to subscribe right now. All the people who are watching, look at the wonderful guests that we have here. We have Brian O'Shea, who is not a Fed right now, was a Fed, was in the military, is a private investigator, and he was talking to the Raw Egg Nationalist. Where else are you gonna get content like this, so people? Cool. Yeah. Where else? This is what we do. This is what we fucking do. Okay? Nobody else does this. So you better subscribe and you better become a patron as well. So go to patreon.com. So first over here, Investigate Everything with Brian O'Shea. I'm going to promote the hell out of this. Here we go. Investigate Everything. Go here right now. Subscribe. Subscribe to Brian O'Shea right now and look at all his beautiful work. And again, patreon.com/breaktherules. I cannot stress this enough, people. We need to grow, and we will keep growing thanks to your help. I am loading up sticky notes right now because that is where the patreon.com link is. All the sticky notes open at once. Doesn't matter. Here, patreon.com/breaktherules. Go here right now. Become a patron. You're going to get all kinds of beautiful stuff. I'm not going to go down the list right now, but eventually I'm going to formulate the Patreon contest that we're going to have where, like, people who reach a certain number of referred patrons are going to get a free $50 patronage.
I also have a PayPal link now, so it'll be on videos, and go and read my article in IM 1776, and go and buy Raw Egg Nationalist Cookbook.
Yes.
Please. Go and buy.
Yes.
Maybe you could zoom in. Contains within her some of the secrets of raw egg nationalism, an esoteric movement of self-realization that has set the Anon bodybuilder community ablaze. So there you go. Please go and buy our good friend Raw Egg Nationalist Cookbook. It has a lot of gems in it.
Come on.
Actually, he has a great steak recipe that I tried. It's pretty good.
Oh, and the ice cream is amazing. I made ice cream using his recipe. All it is you take an egg and you mix up the whites, you mix up the yellows, then you put in I put in some Indian jaggery, but you can use maple syrup, and you put in cream as well in there, and that's it. Those are all the ingredients. You put that in the freezer. It comes out. It is so delicious, and I think it's great for you too. So there we go. So guys, I think this is pretty much the end. You know what? I'm not going to do the calf raises tomorrow. I'm going to work on the legs. This is it. This is the end of the stream. I appreciate everybody. Alexandra,
Please come
follow
again, everybody.
Alexandra, follow Thad, follow everybody. So I am ending the stream right now.
Have a
Thank
good
you so
night,
much.
guys.
Mwah. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
See ya, ciao.
Thank you.
Subscribe,
God bless
subscribe,
you.
subscribe. Bye-bye. Here we go.